Welcome to Novel Love Hearing. We bring you hundreds of novel audiobooks covering every genre and every kind of story you can imagine. Action? We've got it. Adventure? Absolutely. Horror? Of course. Whether it's the legendary Uchiha massacre or outrageous tales like stealing Naruto's and Sasuke's women, you'll find it here. From epic series like One Piece, Bleach, Fairy Tail, and Hunter x Hunter, to countless other adventures, our library has it all. Love novels but don't have time to read? No worries, just plug in your earbuds, sit back, and let the story take over. Good listening, and happy hearing. They might learn the Academy 3, some basic trap making, and kunai and shuriken throwing techniques. As for other jutsu, unless you had a clan to teach you, you'd have to wait until you became a full-fledged ninja and find other ways to learn them. Suddenly, Mikoto passed Shin a notebook. Shin took it, looking at her questioningly. These are the notes I took during the lesson. Maybe they'll be helpful. Mikoto said softly. Thank you, Mikoto-san. Shin said gratefully, opening the notebook. Her handwriting was elegant, far neater than his. It was a pleasure just to look at. Mikoto blushed, her head lowered. Shin had called her Mikoto-san, omitting her family name. Only close friends did that. Uzumaki-san, are we friends now? Mikoto asked, her eyes shining with hope. Shin paused, then smiled. Of course. And please, call me Shin. Uzumaki-san sounds too formal. Thank you, Uzumaki. Shin-san. Mikoto beamed. She finally had a friend. Chapter 22, Copying Sharingan Prowess. At noon, Shin and Kushina left the academy. School was out, and they were heading home for lunch. Shin, wait up. Shin stopped and turned to see Nawaki running towards them. Shin, you're new to Hidden Leaf Village, right? You probably don't know your way around. Would you like me to give you a tour? Nawaki offered enthusiastically. Shin thought it over. Familiarizing himself with Hidden Leaf Village was a good idea, and having Nawaki as a guide wouldn't hurt. Sure, that would be great, Nawaki. Awesome. Let's grab some food first. My treat. Ramen, anyone? Nawaki grinned. Thanks for showing us around, but lunch is on me. Shin insisted. They had a decent amount of money saved up from their allowance in Hidden Eddy Village. Well, if you insist. Nawaki considered his meager funds. He probably didn't have enough to treat them, so he didn't argue. Despite being the grandson of the Shodaime Hokage, Nawaki was perpetually broke, thanks to his gambling addict sister. Nawaki led them to a small street lined with food stalls near the academy. They entered a ramen shop. Looks like a lot of academy students eat here. Kushina observed. Yeah, it's too much trouble to go home and come back. We'd lose all our lunch break. Most of us either bring our own lunch or eat here. Nawaki explained. Makes sense. There's only a little over an hour for lunch break. Going home would be cutting it close. Shin agreed. If your house was close to the academy, it wouldn't be a problem, but if it was far, you might be late. Hey, Mikoto-san, you're here too? Shin scanned the ramen shop and saw Mikoto Uchiha sitting quietly in a corner, eating her ramen. Wow, you have good eyes. You spotted her all the way over there. Kushina said, a hint of jealousy in her voice. Shin-san? Mikoto looked up in surprise. Mind if we join you? Shin smiled as he walked over. Kushina trailed behind him, shooting Mikoto a hostile look. Nawaki hesitated, then followed. He wasn't thrilled about sitting with an Uchiha. The feud between the Senju and Uchiha clans ran deep. I didn't expect to see you all here, Shin-san, Kushina-san, Nawaki-san. Mikoto said with a gentle smile. Knowing this, I would have rather gone home. Kushina muttered under her breath, loud enough for only Shin to hear. Shin ordered a bowl of tonkatsu ramen. Kushina ordered the same. Nawaki went for miso ramen. Perhaps because of Mikoto's presence, Nawaki, usually a chatterbox, was unusually quiet. Kushina waited for her ramen, chin resting on her hand. Mikoto ate quietly. The atmosphere was a bit awkward. The ramen shop, however, was bustling with activity. A while later, their ramen arrived. As Shin slurped his noodles, the shop suddenly fell silent. He looked up, confused. Then he saw a ninja enter the shop and understood. The ninja's uniform bore the same clan symbol as Mikoto, the Uchiha fan. The Uchiha clan sure has a presence, Shin thought. He's a jonin from our clan. He has a bad temper. Mikoto explained. An Uchiha jonin, huh? Shin thought of his replication system. Can a common replication card copy his Sharingan prowess? He wanted to copy, not the Sharingan KK Genkai itself, but the ocular prowess it granted. He wasn't sure if it was possible. His strength is at jonin level. Copying is feasible. The system confirmed. Shin looked at the Uchiha jonin. Use one common replication card to copy his Sharingan prowess. He felt a tingling sensation in his eyes. A surge of power flooded his vision. Surprised by the sudden change, Shin quickly covered his eyes. 3 black tomoe swirled momentarily in his eyes. Shin, what's wrong? Kushina asked, alarmed. Nothing, just got some soup in my eye. Shin said with a chuckle, removing his hand. Oh, be careful. Shin continued eating, but his mind was racing. He had copied the Uchiha's Sharingan prowess, his 1 tomoe Sharingan instantly evolving to 3 tomoe. A 5-year-old with a 3 tomoe Sharingan? If the Uchiha clan found out, who knew what they would do? This system cheat is insane. What's the point of training when you can just copy everything? But even with this cheat, he couldn't slack off. He had to work hard, or it would be a waste of the system's potential. If I keep accumulating Sharingan prowess, can I keep evolving my Sharingan? Shin theorized that with enough ocular power, he could evolve his Mangekyo Sharingan into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan without needing a sibling's eyes. Sharingan prowess was essentially yin style, the manipulation of spiritual energy. Ganjutsu, for example, relied on yin style. So, theoretically, with enough spiritual energy, he could even awaken the Rinnegan. No, the Rinnegan probably wasn't that simple. It seemed to require a combination of yin and yang style. But regardless, Shin felt he had stumbled upon another way to obtain the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Hey, Shin, why are you spacing out while eating? You're getting noodles in your nose. Kushina nudged him, bringing him back to reality. Kushina, Mikoto, and Nawaki were all staring at him. Shin felt his cheeks burn. Just thinking about something. He mumbled, shaking his head to clear his thoughts. He'd contemplate this later, at home. After finishing their meal, Shin paid for everyone's ramen, including Mikoto's. Mikoto tried to pay him back, but Shin insisted, saying they were friends. Chapter 23, First Encounter with Orochimaru and Jiraiya. I'm stuffed. Let's go. Shin wiped his mouth, then Kushina's, earning him a smug grin from her. She shot a triumphant look at Mikoto. Mikoto didn't react to the provocation, instead returning a gentle smile, much to Kushina's annoyance. Mikoto didn't seem to care about her rivalry at all. And after interacting with her, Kushina found it hard to maintain her hostility towards such a sweet girl. Hold it right there. Just as they were about to leave the ramen shop, the Uchiha ninja stopped them. Shin frowned, turning to face the man. He had just copied the man's Sharingan prowess, evolving his own Sharingan to 3 tomoe, but he still didn't like the guy. The man was arrogant and unpleasant, no one would like him. You're an Uchiha, aren't you? Why are you with a senju? The Uchiha ninja questioned Mikoto. Mikoto lowered her head, remaining silent, her face pale. Seeing Mikoto like this, Kushina bristled. What's it to you? She retorted. She didn't like this Uchiha one bit. What did you say? The Uchiha stood up, his 3 tomoe Sharingan glaring at Kushina. Kushina, intimidated, hid behind Shin. He was a Jonin, a killer. His killing intent, amplified by his Sharingan, was palpable. If Kushina hadn't witnessed the destruction of her clan and experienced such trauma, she might have been paralyzed with fear. Shin's eyes narrowed. He could tolerate a lot to maintain his low profile, but this was crossing the line. He was about to step in when a familiar voice rang out. Shin, Kushina, Nawaki, what are you doing here? Tsunade approached, flanked by 2 others. One had a pale face and an aura of coldness, like a venomous snake lurking in the shadows. This was Orochimaru, Tsunade's teammate. The other had spiky white hair and red markings under his eyes. Jiraiya. Is there a problem here? Tsunade noticed the Uchiha Jonin, his Sharingan activated and killing intent radiating from him. A Jonin intimidating children? How impressive. What's your name? Tsunade asked coldly. The Uchiha Jonin paled. He recognized Tsunade, every ninja in Hidden Lee Village knew her. He could act tough in front of others, but not in front of Tsunade. She wasn't afraid of the Uchiha clan, and she wasn't afraid to use her fists. If she punched him, even the Uchiha clan head wouldn't be able to do anything about it. He had no choice but to back down. Besides, Tsunade was the best medic in Hidden Lee Village. If he ended up in the hospital, she could make sure he never left. Get lost. And if you ever bother them again, I'll make sure you regret it, Tsunade threatened. The Uchiha Jonin, or Yoruchiha, scurried away. Even if he was an Uchiha genius, the clan wouldn't risk disrespecting Tsunade for him. Tsunade was the Sandaime Hokage's student. Fighting her was the same as fighting the Hokage. If the Hokage found a reason to punish them, the Uchiha clan would suffer. The current Sandaime Hokage wasn't the weak old man he would become, he was still a force to be reckoned with. Kushina, are you alright? Shin asked. Kushina shook her head. With Shin by her side, she wasn't that scared. I'll get you back for this. One day, Ryota. Shin glared at the Uchiha's retreating figure. If they weren't in Hidden Leaf Village, Ryota would be dead. Shin was confident he could kill an Uchiha Jonin. He might not be able to take on an elite Jonin yet, but a regular Jonin was no problem. PFFT, ha 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 ha. What did you say, kid? Jiraiya burst out laughing. Shin looked at Jiraiya and said with a smirk. I said, one day, I'll dig a hole and bury you in it. Jiraiya's laughter died in his throat. Sis, thank goodness you came. That was a close one. Nawaki said, relieved. I'm sorry. It's my fault. Mikoto apologized. It's not your fault, Mikoto. That guy was just being a jerk. If I were stronger, I'd punch him in the face. Kushina said, patting Mikoto's shoulder. Shin looked at Kushina, then at Mikoto. When did they become friends? Kushina had been so hostile towards Mikoto earlier. Seeing Mikoto's vulnerability had softened Kushina's heart. Her hostility had melted away. You're an Uchiha? Tsunade asked Mikoto. Why yes. Mikoto looked at Tsunade nervously. Don't be scared. I'm not going to eat you. But you're quite different from the other Uchiha, aren't you? Tsunade observed. Mikoto didn't have the usual Uchiha arrogance. Most Uchiha, regardless of age or gender, were arrogant and haughty. They were the classic young masters. Always looking down on others. Tsunade had a good impression of Mikoto. She didn't judge her based on her clan. Let me introduce you. This is my teammate, Orochimaru, and this deadweight is Jiraiya. Tsunade gestured towards her two companions. Shin had already recognized them. They were hard to miss. Deadweight? You're calling me deadweight? Jiraiya grumbled. Orochimaru remained silent, his gaze fixed on Shin. Shin looked back at the snake Sannin. Why was he staring at him? Had Orochimaru already embarked on his path of forbidden research and taken an interest in him? No, that was impossible. It was too early for that. But why was he staring? Shin felt uncomfortable under Orochimaru's intense gaze, like a mouse being watched by a snake. Interesting. Orochimaru said with a sly smile. Shin frowned. Orochimaru's smile didn't bode well. Chapter 24, Guidance from Uzumaki Mido. After a brief exchange, Orochimaru and Jiraiya left, but Tsunade stayed behind. As Orochimaru departed, he cast another lingering glance at Shin. Shin didn't sense any malice, but he still felt uneasy. What was that confrontation with Ryota Uchiha about? Tsunade inquired. Nawaki explained the situation, causing Tsunade to frown. The Uchiha are always causing trouble. Mikoto shifted uncomfortably. She knew Tsunade wasn't referring to her specifically, but she still felt awkward. She was an Uchiha, after all. Don't worry, I wasn't talking about you. Tsunade reassured her, noticing Mikoto's discomfort. She had a good impression of Mikoto, who seemed different from the other Uchiha. By the way, I have to leave the village for a mission. It's an escort mission, should take about half a month. Tsunade informed them. Oh. Nawaki couldn't help but grin. Tsunade's smile vanished, replaced by a dangerous glint in her eyes. Nawaki, you seem happy about this. No, not at all. Nawaki shook his head vigorously. I'll deal with you later. I have to go. Tsunade glared at Nawaki, then waved goodbye to the others before turning to leave. Nawaki breathed a sigh of relief once she was out of sight. Nawaki, are you scared of your sister? Shin asked. Nawaki scratched his head. A little. She's really strict when she trains me. Come on, weren't you going to show us around Hidden Leaf Village? We have some time before class. Let's explore the area. Shin looked at Mikoto. Mikoto-san, want to join us? Oh, may I? Mikoto looked surprised and pleased. Of course. Shin smiled, and the four of them set off to explore Hidden Leaf Village. Shin and Kushina were unfamiliar with the village, so Nawaki acted as their guide, pointing out various landmarks and locations. Since they didn't have much time before their afternoon class, they only explored the area near the academy. It was good to familiarize themselves with the surroundings. Soon, it was time to head back for class. Back in their seats, Shin asked Mikoto. Mikoto, that incident earlier. It won't cause you any trouble, will it? He had dropped the honorifics, a sign of their growing friendship. Mikoto shook her head. I'll be fine. I'm practically invisible in the Uchiha clan. No one will bother me over this. Actually, I should be the one apologizing. Mikoto looked at Shin and Kushina apologetically. Mikoto, we're friends now. No need to apologize. Kushina said. Perhaps they were destined to be best friends. Kushina, who had initially been hostile towards Mikoto, now seemed quite fond of her. The afternoon class was another lecture. Kushina wasn't interested in theory, she felt like falling asleep. Shin felt the same. If the lecture had been useful, he would have paid attention, but it was all stuff he already knew or found irrelevant. School let out early, a little after 4 in the afternoon. After school, they accepted Nawaki's invitation to explore more of Hidden Leaf Village. Back at the Senju compound, Shin refrained from practicing taijutsu or sword art. He didn't want to attract attention so soon after arriving in Hidden Leaf Village, so he focused on chakra refinement. He didn't know if the Sandame had assigned Anbu to watch them, but it was better to be safe than sorry. Practicing taijutsu or sword art might reveal his true strength. Even practicing ninjutsu was risky. For now, he'd stick to refining chakra. Should I copy the Byakugan? Shin thought of his advanced replication card. He had 4 cards in total, 3 common and 1 advanced. The advanced card could copy S-rank jutsu, Kage-level chakra and physique, and even Kekkei Genkai. The Byakugan, while seemingly less impressive than the Sharingan and Rinnegan, had powerful sensory capabilities and could even evolve into the Tenseigan. The Tenseigan was a dojutsu on par with the Rinnegan, perhaps even surpassing it in offensive power. After some consideration, Shin decided against it. While the Byakugan's sensory abilities were useful, especially for detecting surveillance, it would also turn his eyes completely white. Walking around with those eyes would draw unwanted attention, especially from the Hyuga clan. If only I had the mind's eye of Kagura. It's even better than the Byakugan. He shook his head, pushing the thought aside. He didn't know how to awaken it, or if it was even possible for him. As far as he knew, only Karen possessed that ability. A few days passed. Shin and Kushina's days were filled with school, exploring Hidden Leaf Village with Nawaki and Mikoto, and chakra refinement. One day, they were summoned to Uzumaki Mido's residence, along with Kayadakiko. I've called you here today to teach you the Uzumaki clan sealing jutsu. Shin's face lit up. This was great news. With Mito's guidance, they would progress quickly in Fu-in jutsu. Kai and Takiko were also excited. We'll start with the most basic sealing formulas. Mito said seriously. These children were the last remnants of the Uzumaki clan, the hope for its revival. As a former princess of the clan, Mito wanted nothing more than to see it restored to its former glory. She would teach them everything she could. How much they learned, however, depended on their talent. From then on, their days were filled with school, followed by lessons in Fu-in jutsu from Mito after dinner. Under Mito's tutelage, Shin, already a genius, progressed rapidly. Kushina also learned a lot. She was talented, second only to Shin. But Shin had warned her not to stand out too much. She should learn the jutsu, but pretend she wasn't as skilled as she actually was. Chapter 25, Time to Ditch the Dead Weight. This is a bonus chapter. We're almost at 250 power stones. Thank you all very much. Over a year had passed since Shin arrived in Hidden Leaf Village. In the training ground of Tsunada's small courtyard, Shin practiced his swordsmanship, his katana flashing in the sunlight. Not many in the shinobi world specialized in sword art. Most relied on ninjutsu, it was the primary focus of their training. The most skilled swordsman in Hidden Leaf Village was probably Sakamo Hatake, though it seemed he hadn't earned the moniker Hidden Leaf Village's White Fang yet. Shin hadn't even heard the name Sakamo Hatake before. He was probably still relatively unknown. Mastering sword art required not just hard work, but also finding your own path. From the beginning, Shin had known what path he wanted to take, one that maximized his strengths. And his strengths were his perfect sage body, granting him monstrous strength and speed. His sword dart would be one of overwhelming power and swiftness. 3-step slash. Shin unleashed 3 slashes in the blink of an eye, effortlessly slicing the wooden training dummy into 4 pieces. 3 slashes per second were child's play for him now. His limit was 5. 5 slashes in a single second, a true testament to his speed. Even an elite Jonin, caught off guard, wouldn't be able to withstand such an assault. If I could combine this with space-time ninjutsu, I can already imagine myself racking up kills on the battlefield. Unfortunately, he didn't know any space-time ninjutsu. He was eager to learn, though. Such jutsu were incredibly versatile, invaluable for both offense and defense. Shin, breakfast is ready. We have that test today, so we need to leave early. Kushina called out. Shin sheathed his katana and headed inside. Kushina had already prepared breakfast. It was a simple meal of bread and milk. Shin had baked the bread, Kushina had only set the table. He didn't dare let Kushina cook. She was a master of creating culinary abominations. The one time he had tried her cooking, he had spent the entire morning throwing up. From then on, he had banned her from the kitchen. After breakfast, Shin packed their lunches and they headed out. Tsunada wasn't home. As an elite Jonin, she was always on missions. At the academy, The classroom was filled with a mix of anxiety and excitement. Those with good grades were eager to show off, while those who struggled dreaded the test. "Mikoto, I'm counting on you for the written exam," Shin said as he sat down. The morning was dedicated to the written test. Shin had no interest in studying those theoretical concepts, and the questions were often bizarre. Cheating was his only option. But he had to choose his source wisely. Most of the class were hopeless. Thankfully, Mikoto was a top student, consistently scoring first in the written exams. "Just don't get caught," Mikoto said with a smile. "Don't worry, I won't," Shin assured her. Mikoto gave him a dubious look. "That's what you said last time, and we both ended up getting punished." "Ahem, that was an accident." Shin cringed, remembering the time he got caught cheating. But that was a fluke, it wouldn't happen again. The morning passed, and the written test concluded. Shin had copied Mikoto's answers, he was confident he'd done well. He had also helped Kushina and Nawaki cheat. They were both terrible at academics. After the written test, they had a break for lunch. Shin, Kushina, and Mikoto found a quiet spot to eat their lunch. Over the past year, they had become close friends. "We have the practical test this afternoon. Are you nervous?" Mikoto asked. "Why would we be nervous? We've done this so many times already," Shin said nonchalantly. "The academy held tests every month. These test scores don't even matter. They don't affect graduation," Shin added. "Then why did you cheat?" Mikoto's question almost made Shin choke on his food. "Ahem, I just don't want to be at the bottom of the class." "Yeah, me neither," Kushina chimed in. After lunch, they had a short break before the practical test. Tanaka-sensei led the class to the training grounds. The results for the written test are in. Mikoto Uchiha scored a perfect score, placing first in the class. Tanaka-sensei announced. No one seemed surprised. Mikoto was always at the top. "Also, Uzumaki Shin, Senju Nawaki, did you two cheat? Who copied from whom? You have the same score, and you even got the same questions wrong." Tanaka-sensei glared at them. Nawaki avoided his gaze, while Shin remained calm. Inwardly, however, Shin was cursing Nawaki's stupidity. He had helped him cheat, but did he have to copy everything? When Shin copied from Mikoto, he had deliberately answered a few questions incorrectly. Kushina had done the same when she copied from him. But Nawaki had copied everything, including the wrong answers. It was no wonder they got caught. "Nawaki, sorry buddy, but it's time to ditch the dead weight," Shin thought ruthlessly. "Tanaka-sensei, Nawaki copied from me. I know it was wrong, but he threatened to beat me up if I didn't let him. I didn't have a choice." Shin put on an Oscar-worthy performance, as if he had truly been threatened. Nawaki gaped at him. He had begged Shin to help him cheat, but he had never threatened him. "Nawaki, I can't believe you'd do that. I'm telling Grandma Mido." "Well, maybe if you confess, I might reconsider," Kushina said angrily. Shin mentally gave Kushina a thumbs up. He decided he wouldn't help Nawaki cheat anymore. This guy was a liability. Nawaki felt a wave of despair. Kushina's words were a clear threat. She was forcing him to confess. Shin and Kushina were so mean. "I'm sorry, Tanaka-sensei. I copied." Nawaki confessed, hanging his head. "Copy the questions from this test 100 times. You have 3 days," Tanaka-sensei said without a trace of sympathy. Nawaki felt like he had been struck by lightning. Copying the questions 100 times? He'd be dead from exhaustion. And he only had 3 days. He wanted to cry. Chapter 26, Shin's bribery and threats. Nawaki squatted on the ground, his face a picture of despair. Copying the test questions 100 times was pure torture. Shin gave him a sympathetic look. Honest, he thought. Not gloating at all. Next up, the practical test. We'll start with kunai throwing, Tanaka-sensei announced, glancing at Nawaki. "Nawaki, what are you still doing on the floor? Want me to add another 100 lines?" Nawaki shot to his feet, glaring at Tanaka-sensei as if he were a demon. Shin patted Nawaki's shoulder. "Sacrifices must be made, my friend. You understand?" Nawaki gave him a mournful look. 100 times. How could he understand? "All right, let's begin. Uzumaki Shin, you're first." "Lucky me, first up." Shin smiled, pulled a kunai from his pouch, and stood at the designated distance, about 15 meters from the target. They were still young students, throwing accurately from a greater distance would be challenging for most. With a flick of his wrist, the kunai flew through the air, striking the target with a satisfying thud. 9 points. Not bad. Almost a perfect score. Tanaka-sensei said approvingly. "Humphrey, is that all you've got?" A sneer reached Shin's ears. He didn't need to turn around to know it was Kai. Shin turned and faced him. "K, what was that?" I didn't quite catch it. Say that again. Kai met Shin's gaze, a flicker of fear in his eyes. Shin had broken his leg when they were younger, the memory still haunted him. He wasn't sure if he hated Shin more than he feared him, or the other way around. Seeing Kai shut his mouth, Shin snorted and returned to Kushina's side. Why only 9 points? Kushina whispered. Don't want to stand out too much. 9 is a good score. Shin said with a smile. He didn't need to flaunt his abilities. He was still a young dragon, learning to fly. He would soar through the skies one day. The kunai throwing test concluded. 4 students achieved a perfect score, Mikoto, Nawaki, Minato, and, surprisingly, Kai. That smug look on his face is really annoying. Kushina glared at Kai, her fists clenched. If he came any closer, she'd punch him. Don't mind him. Shin said calmly. But inwardly, he was plotting ways to take Kai down a peg or two. After the kunai throwing, it was time for the sparring matches. They were paired up for one-on-one combat. I'll now announce the pairings. Uzumaki Shin and Senju Nawaki, Uzumaki Kushina and Mikoto Uchiha, Hayashi Hyuga and Hyuga Hisashi, Uzumaki Kai and Minato Namikaze. Whoa, sibling rivalry? Tanaka-sensei is ruthless. Shin looked at Hayashi and Hisashi, feigning sympathy while inwardly relishing the upcoming match. I wouldn't mind being paired with you. Hayashi said to Shin, his expression stoic. Nah, I don't want to be with a stick in the mud. Hayashi always had the same serious, expressionless face. Shin found it boring. Shin, we're paired up. What am I supposed to do? Nawaki asked, his voice filled with dread. Nawaki, out of allowance again? Tell you what, I'll treat you to yakiniku. Just throw the match, okay? Shin gave him a friendly smile. And Nawaki, you wouldn't want Tsunoda to find out you cheated on the test, would you? Bribery and threats. Nawaki caved instantly. Hayashi, standing nearby, twitched. Sensei, something's fishy here. The sparring matches began. Shin had bribed Nawaki, so their match ended quickly. Ouch. Why did you have to hit so hard? Nawaki clutched his stomach, barely able to stand. Duh, it has to look convincing. What if they find out we're faking it? Shin helped Nawaki up. They watched the other matches. Kushina and Mikoto were evenly matched, though Kushina wasn't using her full strength. At this stage, most of them didn't know any jutsu. The Uzumaki and Senju, with their superior physique, had an advantage in taijutsu. This was evident in Kai and Minato's match. Minato was getting pummeled. The Senju and Uzumaki were incredibly durable. Minato's punches barely phased Kai, but when Kai landed a blow, Minato felt it. In the end, Kai emerged victorious. Shin shook his head. This was the advantage of having a KK Genkai. The world was unfair. But this was only temporary. Kai could bully Minato now, but in the future, he wouldn't stand a chance. Minato-san, are you alright? Akiko approached Minato, concern in her eyes. Thank you for your concern, Akiko-san. I'm fine. Minato said with a smile. Despite the bruises, his smile remained bright. Kei, who had been gloating over his victory, froze when he saw Akiko fussing over Minato. He had a crush on Akiko. Seeing this, jealousy burned within him. Looks like things are about to get interesting. Shin said to Nawaki, a mischievous glint in his eyes. Kai stomped towards Minato. Minato. Minato turned, only to be met with Kai's fist. Caught off guard, Minato was struck squarely in the eye, earning himself a shiner. Kei, what are you doing? Akiko yelled angrily. Tanaka-sensei's attention was drawn to the commotion. He rushed over and grabbed Kai. Kei, your match is over. Why did you attack Minato-san? Tanaka-sensei demanded. Hey, what's going on? Kushina and Mikoto joined Shin. Huh? Your match is over? Yeah, and I won. Kushina said excitedly, looking at Shin expectantly. Oh. Shin's flat response deflated Kushina's excitement. Kushina pouted. Couldn't he at least sound a bit more enthusiastic? Chapter 27, The Choice for Nine-Tails Jinchuriki Shin, what's going on here? Mikoto, seeing Tanaka-sensei scolding Kei, asked Shin for an explanation. Well, it's a bit complicated, but I'll give you the short version. Shin cleared his throat. Kai likes Akiko, but Akiko seems to have a thing for Minato. So, Kei, in a fit of jealousy, punched Minato. Wow, Kai likes Akiko? Poor Akiko. Kushina said, shaking her head. By the way, your match ended so quickly. Who won? Mikoto asked curiously. I did, of course. Nawaki is no match for me. I could take him down with one hand tied behind my back. Shin glanced at Nawaki, but he wasn't exaggerating. He really could defeat Nawaki with one hand. You're so mean, Shin. You bribed me. If you hadn't, I would have crushed you. Nawaki protested. Yeah, right. You'd be the one getting crushed. Kushina scoffed. If Shin used his full strength, Nawaki wouldn't stand a chance. It's satisfying to see Kai get scolded, Shin said with a smirk. Kai was severely reprimanded and forced to apologize to Minato. Minato readily forgave him. He forgave him just like that? Shouldn't he at least try to get even? Shin remarked. Uzumaki Shin. Kai roared. What? Want to fight me? I'll break your other leg. Kei, who had been fuming, felt a phantom pain in his leg and backed down. The other students were surprised. Why was Kai so afraid of Shin? Shin was good, but he wasn't that much better than Kai. What was going on? Alright, no fighting. If I catch you brawling, you'll be punished. Tanaka-sensei warned. That concludes today's test. Class dismissed. Minato-san, go get those injuries treated. Cheers erupted as the students celebrated their early dismissal. Shin, don't forget you owe me yakiniku. Nawaki reminded him. Don't worry, you'll get your meat. Let's go. Shin, Kushina, Mikoto, and a hopeful Nawaki headed towards a yakiniku restaurant. At the Senju compound, the Sandaime Hokage stood outside Uzumaki Mito's residence. Mito-sama, Saratobe Hiruzen requests an audience. Ah, it's Little Monkey. Come in. Hiruzen blushed at the nickname. Thankfully, they were alone, it would have been embarrassing otherwise. Mito-sama, you summoned me? Hiruzen hadn't come of his own volition, Mito had sent for him. Hiruzen, I called you here to discuss the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Mito had stopped calling him Little Monkey. Much to his relief. I'm old, Hiruzen. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. We need to choose a new Jinchuriki soon. Hiruzen was silent for a moment. What are your thoughts, Mito-sama? The Nine-Tails Jinchuriki should ideally be in Uzumaki. Only their constitution can properly suppress the Kyuubi. Otherwise, it might go on a rampage or even break free from the seal. Mito's voice was grave. The Nine-Tails was a force to be reckoned with. Without Hashirama, Hidden Leaf Village would struggle to contain its power. I agree. Hiruzen was also cautious when it came to the Nine-Tails. Its importance was undeniable, and the Uzumaki were the most suitable candidates for becoming its Jinchuriki. Do you have anyone in mind, Mito-sama? I can only offer suggestions. The final decision is yours, Hiruzen. First, I recommend Uzumaki Shin. He's the most suitable candidate. Then there's Uzumaki Kushina and Uzumaki Akiko. What about Uzumaki Kai? He seems quite talented. Mito shook her head. He is talented, but he's also consumed by hatred and jealousy. He's not suitable to be the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Any Uzumaki was technically suitable, but Kai's personality made him a poor choice. Uzumaki Shin? Hiruzen frowned. He had gathered information on the Uzumaki survivors. Uzumaki Hikaru was out of the question, he was an adult and harder to control. Hiruzen didn't trust him. As for Shin, his performance at the academy wasn't as impressive as Kai's. Why was Mito recommending him? Is this for the Senju clan? Hiruzen wondered. Shin was close to Tsunade and was practically considered a Senju. Perhaps Mito was trying to secure an advantage for the Senju. Hiruzen's guess was completely off the mark. Mito recommended Shin because of his immense life force, which could suppress the Nine-Tails completely. He would be the safest choice. The Kyuubi is volatile, filled with hatred. I think a female Jinchuriki would be better. Perhaps we can use love to tame the beast. Uzumaki Akiko seems like a good choice. Hiruzen lowered his head. Mito looked at him, disappointment clouding her eyes. Hiruzen had changed. His thoughts were transparent to her. She understood why he wasn't choosing Shin or Kushina. It was because of their close ties to the Senju clan. Mito-sama, what do you think? Hiruzen asked, a flicker of guilt in his eyes. The Nine-Tails was too important. He couldn't allow any single clan to control it. You've already made up your mind, Hiruzen. Do as you see fit. I'm tired. You may leave. Mito waved him away, her disappointment evident. Then I'll take my leave. If you need anything, Mito-sama, please don't hesitate to send for me. Hiruzen bowed and left. Outside, his guilt was overwhelming, but then his expression hardened. Forgive me, Mito-sama, but the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki is too important. No single clan in Hidden Leaf Village should have control over it. Shin and Kushina were too close to the Senju. Kai's personality was unsuitable. That left Akiko. Hiruzen didn't want to see the Senju clan rise to power again. Chapter 28, profiting off Tsunade evening fell, and Shin and his friends emerged from the yakiniku restaurant, Nawaki patting his full stomach with satisfaction. You sure can pack it away, Nawaki. Looks like I'll have to drag your sister to the gambling dens again. Shin patted his wallet, which was significantly lighter than before. Can I come too? I want to make some money. Nawaki's eyes lit up. You want to make money? What for? Tsunade will just take it all. Shin said, pitying the boy. Having a gambling-addicted sister must be tough. Shin, Kushina, I'll see you tomorrow. Mikoto said with a smile. The Senju and Uchiha compounds were on opposite sides of the village. With the deep-rooted animosity between the two clans, they naturally wouldn't live close to each other. See you tomorrow. Shin waved. Kushina pinched Shin discreetly, then gave Mikoto a bright smile. Shin glared at Kushina, who glared right back. What was that for? Shin grumbled. He hadn't done anything to deserve a pinch. Humphrey, you and Mikoto seem to be getting awfully chummy. A bit too chummy. Kushina huffed, jealousy evident in her voice. Shin shook his head at Kushina's childish jealousy and headed home with her. As for Nawaki? He was left behind, forgotten. Back at the Senju compound, Nawaki went to his own residence, while Shin and Kushina returned to Tsunade's courtyard. Oh, Tsunade, you're back. Shin's eyes lit up when he saw her. Tsunade glanced at him. Seeing that sparkle in his eyes, she knew he wanted something. Spit it out. What do you need? I'm in a good mood, I might just agree. You'll definitely agree to this. I'm a bit short on cash. How about we make a trip to the gambling dens? Humphrey, using me to make money again? Do you have no faith in my gambling skills? Tsunade stood up, grabbed Shin's face, and started pinching his cheeks. Tsunade, let go of Shin right now. Kushina, the queen of jealousy, couldn't stand seeing Tsunade manhandle Shin. Tsunade chuckled at Kushina's outburst. After a while, she finally let go. Shin's cheeks were so soft and squishy, she could pinch them all day. Fine, I'll help you make some money. But we split the profits 50-50. Tsunade declared. What? 50-50? That's not fair. Shin protested, rubbing his cheeks. If it weren't for the fact that Tsunade had agreed to keep his strength a secret, he would never have agreed to her cheek-pinching condition. Not fair? Don't forget, you're relying on me to make the money. Tsunade said with a smirk. Fine. Shin might be complaining, but he knew this was a good deal. All he had to do was bet against Tsunade, and he'd make a killing. That was his strategy. Thankfully, Tsunade wasn't infamous yet. She wasn't known as the legendary sucker yet. Otherwise, this plan wouldn't work. Let's go. Tsunade grabbed Shin's hand, channeled chakra to her feet, and vanished in a series of leaps, leaving Kushina fuming. That woman. She left me behind again. Kushina wanted to follow, but she didn't know where they were going. She could only wait at home. They returned late at night, both grinning as they counted their winnings. Shin, when are we going to make another killing? Tsunade had earned over 10 million ryo, even after splitting the profits. That was equivalent to the reward for over a dozen S-rank missions. When we run out of money. This should last us a while. If they were frugal, 10 million ryo could last them over a decade. But being a shinobi was expensive. Still, this should be enough to last them until graduation. You're finally back. Shin, did that woman do anything to you? Kushina rushed out, grabbing Shin and glaring at Tsunade. Hey, brat, do you think I'm some kind of pervert? Tsunade said indignantly. Humphrey, you think you're being subtle? I see right through you, you cougar. Shin, embarrassed, excused himself and went to his room. You two have fun arguing. I'm going to bed. Little girl, if you weren't so young, you'd be crying in a corner right now. Tsunade threatened, slamming her fist on a nearby table, shattering it. I'm not scared of you. In a few years, I'll challenge you to a duel, and we'll see who's stronger. Kushina declared, her small fist clenched. Tsunade simply chuckled, her dismissive attitude clear. Kushina took a deep breath. She wasn't strong enough to defeat Tsunade yet. She'd have to be patient. I'm warning you, if you pinch Shin's face again, I won't forgive you. Kushina left to train, seemingly motivated by her rivalry with Tsunade. Tsunade smiled after Kushina left. She didn't mind their bickering. Having Shin and Kushina around had livened up the place. Before, she had lived here alone. It had been lonely. As for Nawaki, he was terrified of Tsunade, always afraid she'd take his allowance. He usually avoided her. In his room, Shin sat on the tatami mat, refining chakra. He didn't know how much chakra he had now, but he felt it surpassed that of most Kage. Of course, this was just in terms of quantity. The quality of his chakra was probably inferior to that of a Kage who had been honing their chakra for decades. Having a large amount of chakra wasn't enough, quality was also important. For example, a tailed beast's chakra was undoubtedly superior to that of a human. Shin, despite having a perfect sage body, still had to refine his chakra to improve its quality. There were no shortcuts, unless he became the Ten Tails Jinchuriki. Chapter 29, Let's sleep together from now on. The next morning, Shin woke up early, washed his face, brushed his teeth, and headed to the training ground. He focused on taijutsu and sword art, leaving ninjutsu practice for later. Well, not here, at least. He had sent several shadow clones to secluded areas in Hidden Leaf Village to train in ninjutsu. When the clones dispersed, their memories and experiences would return to him, making it an efficient way to train. Sharingan. Activate. Shin's eyes turned crimson, 3 Tomoe swirling within. Still just a 3 Tomoe Sharingan. When will it evolve into the Mangekyo? Shin sighed. Over the past year, he had used his 3 common replication cards, copying the Sharingan prowess of Uchiha Jonin. He had discovered that he could copy the same ability from the same person multiple times. All 3 copies were from Ryota Uchiha, the Jonin he had encountered at the ramen shop. These repeated copies had significantly increased his ocular power. Even elite Uchiha probably couldn't match him in that regard. But his Sharingan still hadn't evolved into the Mangekyo, which was disappointing. Did he really need to copy an existing Mangekyo Sharingan? He could, technically. He had 2 advanced replication cards. One was a reward from a mission, and the other was from the system's annual gift. He had been lucky that year. He had the cards, but where could he find an Uchiha with a Mangekyo Sharingan? Did any even exist right now? He wasn't sure. And even if they did, he had no way to approach them. The 3 Tomoe Sharingan was still useful. It granted enhanced visual perception, the ability to copy basic jutsu and taijutsu, and even some ganjutsu. But compared to the Mangekyo Sharingan, it was flawed. He wouldn't mention it to anyone, though. Shin deactivated his Sharingan. He couldn't let Tsunade see it, who knew what kind of trouble it might cause. After training for a while, he went back to prepare breakfast. Neither Kushina nor Tsunade were the type to cook. Yo, Shin, you're up early as always. Tsunade had just woken up and saw that Shin had already prepared breakfast. It's nice having someone make breakfast. I never used to eat breakfast, she said, taking a seat at the table. That explains why you're so underdeveloped. Shin glanced at her chest. Had his transmigration somehow affected Tsunade's development? It was a cruel twist of fate. Sensing his pitying gaze, Tsunade scowled. Want to taste my fist? I'll go wake Kushina up. Shin made a quick escape. Tsunade snorted, then glanced down at her chest. It was a bit small. Damn that brat. I'm still growing, she grumbled, digging into the breakfast Shin had prepared. If Shin had heard her, he would have scoffed. She was already 17. In the world of shinobi, that was practically an adult. Shin entered Kushina's room. He stared at the mess, speechless. It had only been 2 days since he last cleaned her room, and it was already a disaster zone. Unlike other girls with their tidy rooms, Kushina's was always chaotic. It was clear she wasn't the most organized person. Kushina, wake up. Shin nudged her. Her sleeping position was interesting. Ugh, I'm so tired. 5 more minutes. Kushina mumbled, her eyes still closed, her arms wrapping around Shin. It's getting late. If you don't get up now, we'll be late for school. No, I don't want to get up. Kushina snuggled closer to Shin, enjoying the warmth and comfort. This is so comfy. Shin, let's sleep together from now on, okay? Sure, if you don't mind. I'm not complaining, Shin said with a smile. Sleeping with Kushina would be like cuddling a soft pillow. It wouldn't be bad. I don't mind at all. Let's sleep together from now on. Kushina opened her eyes, looking at Shin with a bright smile. Alright, let's get up and eat breakfast first. Otherwise, Tsunade will finish it all. But I'm so sleepy. Kushina rubbed her eyes. She had trained late last night and hadn't gotten enough sleep. Were you refining chakra again? Don't push yourself too hard. It's not good for you, Shin said sternly. And it's not just about having a lot of chakra. There's more to strength than that. You need to know how to use it. Having chakra without knowing any jutsu is useless. But I know jutsu. The Rasengan, the water dragon jutsu, the shadow clone jutsu. Kushina counted off the jutsu she knew. They were all jutsu that Shin knew and had taught her. You haven't mastered them yet. Focus on honing your jutsu. Don't worry about chakra refinement for now. Shin pulled Kushina out of bed. Wait, can you go outside? I need to change. Kushina was usually carefree, but she wouldn't change clothes in front of Shin. Alright. Shin left the room. When he returned, he found that Tsunade had already devoured most of the breakfast. You sure can eat. He'd have to make more, it wasn't enough for the 3 of them. You're one to talk. I'm full. Gotta go, I have things to do. Tsunade pinched Shin's cheek and left. Shin made more breakfast, and after they finished eating, they left for the academy. Aren't we taking lunch today? Kushina asked. Kushina, remember? Mikoto said she'd make us lunch. She's a much better cook than I am. Humphrey, I can cook too. It's just lunch. I'll make you lunch tomorrow. Kushina was jealous that Shin had praised Mikoto's cooking. Shin's face paled. Kushina making him lunch? Kushina, let's not. I don't want to end up in the hospital, or worse, the cemetery. He wouldn't dare eat anything she made. Chapter 30, Kushina, you're really going to sleep with me? Shin and Kushina arrived at the academy just in time. But someone was even later, Nawaki. Under Shin's amused gaze, Nawaki was sent out to stand in the hallway as punishment. Huh, where's Akiko? Shin scanned the classroom, but Akiko was nowhere to be seen. Shin, what are you thinking about? Mikoto asked curiously, noticing his distraction. I was just wondering why Akiko isn't here. Kushina, who had been drowsy, suddenly perked up, her eyes fixed on Shin. Shin, don't tell me you have a thing for Akiko? She asked suspiciously. Kushina, your eyes are scary. Mikoto giggled. I'm not interested in Akiko. I was just curious. Shin said, a bit exasperated. He had no interest in little girls. He wasn't a creep. Besides, Akiko wasn't as pretty as Kushina or Mikoto. I have an announcement regarding Uzumaki Akiko. I'm sure many of you are wondering why she isn't here today. Tanaka-sensei stood at the podium. Akiko has taken a leave of absence. She won't be coming to school for a while. Shin pondered the announcement, a suspicion forming in his mind. After class, Shin approached Kai. Kai, you live with Akiko. Do you know why she is absent? Why should I tell you? Kai glared at Shin. Good question. How about this? Shin placed a hand on Kai's shoulder, applying pressure. Kai broke out in a cold sweat, his shoulders screaming in pain. He didn't cry out, though, maintaining his pride. But he quickly caved. Akiko was called away early this morning. I think she went to Lady Mido's place. Thanks for the info. Shin smiled and returned to his seat, his suspicions confirmed. He guessed that Akiko had been chosen as the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. He didn't know why Akiko, but it was good news for him and Kushina. Becoming a Jinchuriki wasn't a good thing. Not everyone could be like Naruto and gain the tailed beast's approval. Shin, you've never cared about Akiko before. Why are you suddenly interested in her? Kushina asked when Shin returned to his seat. She knew Shin wasn't romantically interested in Akiko, but she couldn't help but feel jealous. Because it's important to us. Shin said cryptically. If he or Kushina had been chosen as a Jinchuriki, he would have had to find a way to refuse. Now, he didn't have to worry about that. Akiko's absence meant she was probably receiving special training from Mido. Becoming a Jinchuriki wasn't easy, it required rigorous preparation. After school, they received a notice that they wouldn't be attending Mido's lessons for the time being. Shin wasn't disappointed. He had already learned everything he needed to know. Mind's eye of Kagura. Shin closed his eyes, and his surroundings appeared in his mind. He could sense chakra with incredible clarity. He had awakened the mind's eye of Kagura, a secret technique that only the Uzumaki clan could learn. Mido had taught it to him. She had also taught it to the others, but he didn't know if they had mastered it. Kushina hadn't. He doubted Kai and Akiko had either. He scanned the entire Senju compound and its surroundings with his expanded sensory range. He continued using the mind's eye of Kagura for an hour before finally opening his eyes, exhaustion weighing on him. It was mental exhaustion. The chakra cost was minimal, but the strain on his mind was significant, especially with prolonged use. But it had its benefits. It slowly increased his mental power. It was one of the ways he had found to strengthen his mind. The other method was to use the system's replication cards to copy Uchiha ocular prowess. Looks like Tsunoda isn't coming back. Let's eat. Shin exited his room and announced to Kushina. I've been waiting forever. I'm starving. Kushina whined dramatically. Shin chuckled and prepared a lavish dinner. They had money now, there was no need to be frugal. After dinner, Shin trained his taijutsu and sword dart in the training ground. He then dispelled his shadow clones, absorbing their memories and experiences. He had secretly sent them out to train in ninjutsu. Shin organized the knowledge he had gained, refined chakra for an hour, then took a bath and prepared for bed. Just as he lay down, his door creaked open, and Kushina entered, clutching a blanket. Shin stared at her, bewildered. Kushina, what are you doing in my room? Shouldn't you be sleeping? Did you forget what you said this morning? We're sleeping together from now on. You promised. Don't tell me you're going back on your word? Kushina tried to sound fierce, but Shin only saw cuteness. Fierce cuteness. Kushina, you're really going to sleep with me? Shin asked, surprised. Of course. And we've slept together before, haven't we? Kushina climbed onto the tatami mat, snuggled up next to Shin, wrapped her arms around him, and rested her head on his chest. That was when we were little. Don't you feel awkward now, Kushina? Shin inhaled the sweet scent of her hair. Not at all. I feel comfortable sleeping with you, Shin. Kushina snuggled closer, nuzzling him. Shin wasn't going to argue. That would be stupid. Alright, let's get some sleep. But try to stay still, okay? No moving around. Shin, do you dislike me? Kushina pouted. Even in the darkness, with only the moonlight filtering through the window, Shin could see her expression. Even if I were to dislike someone, it wouldn't be you. Now go to sleep. Shin pinched her cheek and closed his eyes, enjoying the warmth of this human-shaped pillow. Kushina also felt comfortable and safe in Shin's arms. She quickly drifted off to sleep. Chapter 31, Graduation exam time flew by like a rushing river, and 4 years passed in the blink of an eye. Throughout those years, Shin diligently attended the Ninja Academy. As for graduating early, no, that had never crossed his mind. Now, it was finally time for him to graduate. Currently, the Academy's program was 5 years, a year shorter than it would be in the future. The graduation exam is coming up soon. Are you nervous, Shin? Nawaki sidled up to Shin, his voice laced with anxiety. Graduating required passing an exam, and the current exam was more challenging than the one in the future. First, you had to demonstrate proficiency in the Academy 3, the Substitution Jutsu, Transformation Jutsu, and Clone Jutsu. Then, you had to survive a spar against a Chunin for 10 minutes. Only then could you graduate. Otherwise, you were held back. The Academy recognized that surviving 10 minutes against a Chunin was a tall order for a student, so they allowed them to form teams. Teams could have up to 3 members. As long as one member survived the full 10 minutes, the entire team passed. That made it a bit easier. I'm not nervous, but you seem to be, Nawaki. Shin noticed Nawaki's trembling hands. Yeah, a little. It would be embarrassing to fail. How about we team up? Sorry, I've already teamed up with Kushina and Mikoto. You'll have to find someone else. Shin glanced at Kushina and Mikoto, then back at Nawaki. It was obvious who he'd rather be with. Fine. I knew it. I was going to carry you, but I guess you don't need my help. Nawaki sulked. Soon, Tanaka-sensei arrived and announced the start of the exam. The morning was dedicated to the Jutsu proficiency test. This part was easy for everyone in the class. They were in the elite class, after all. Either clan members or exceptionally talented civilians. The Academy 3 posed no challenge to them. After the morning session, they didn't go home. They ate the lunch Mikoto had prepared in a quiet corner of the training ground. We're finally graduating. Does that mean we can go on missions now? Kushina asked excitedly. Mikoto was unusually quiet, her expression downcast. What's wrong, Mikoto? Are you worried about the exam? Shin asked. No, I'm confident I'll pass. But we'll be separated after graduation, won't we? Mikoto looked at Shin, her voice laced with sadness. Don't worry, Mikoto. Maybe we'll all be assigned to the same team. Kushina said, trying to sound cheerful. But even she was worried about being separated from Shin. If you don't like your assigned team, you can always request a transfer. Shin reassured them. There was no need to worry. They could always ask Tsunade for help. Mikoto and Kushina relaxed, relieved. In the afternoon, the second part of the graduation exam commenced. Even Hiruzen Sarutobi was present. He wouldn't normally pay attention to a graduation exam, but this wasn't an ordinary class. The students in this class were the future of Hidden Leaf Village. Even Hiruzen couldn't ignore them. And it wasn't just Hiruzen. Denzo was also observing, looking for promising recruits for his root organization. After forming their teams, they were assigned their opponents. Shin's team was up against a Chunin who looked about 16. Being a Chunin at 16 had made him arrogant. He looked down on the academy students. As a Chunin who had completed several missions, he saw these students as pampered flowers who had never experienced real combat. He didn't even bother hiding his disdain. You 3 brats should just surrender. Don't blame me if I'm rough. Kimura, their opponent, held his kunai, his eyes filled with contempt. We'll see how rough you can get. Kimura's arrogance annoyed Shin. He was just a lowly Chunin, what was he so smug about? You're asking for it. Kimura sensed Shin's disdain and felt a surge of anger. A mere academy student, looking down on him, a real shinobi? He was determined to make sure Shin didn't graduate. With that attitude, you'd think you were Kage. What's with the arrogance, newbie? Shin said calmly. He disliked this Chunin from the start. Just a Chunin, and he dared to look down on him? Did he think he was Madara Uchiha? Begin. No lethal force. The Chunin examiner announced. He was there to assess their performance and ensure no one got killed. No need for you two to get involved. I'll take care of him, Shin said to Kushina and Mikoto. He walked towards Kimura, his steps measured and confident. Kimura glared at Shin, enraged by his casual attitude. I'll show you the difference between you and a real shinobi. He charged at Shin, his speed impressive. Well, impressive for a regular person. To Shin, he was moving in slow motion. Kimura lunged, thrusting his kunai towards Shin. He aimed for non-lethal areas. He wasn't going to kill him. He wouldn't kill, but he wouldn't hesitate to injure. Weakling. Shin casually deflected the kunai and punched Kimura in the gut. Kimura flew backward like a cannonball, crashing to the ground. He twitched a few times, then passed out. Examiner-san, I believe we passed? Shin looked at the examiner, who was staring at him with his jaw hanging open. Shin chuckled. He had shot the examiner. He had revealed a bit of his strength, but he didn't care anymore. He wasn't the same weakling he used to be. Before, he had hidden his strength because he was weak. But now, he was strong enough to not have to hide. In 4 years, his taijutsu, ninjutsu, and sword art had improved drastically. Most importantly, his 3 Tomoe Sharingan had evolved into the Mangekyo Sharingan. The Mangekyo Sharingan, combined with his perfect sage body, meant he could use its powers without fear of blindness. What did he have to fear now? It was time to step into the spotlight. Chapter 32, A Surprise for Shin, Kushina, and Mikoto left the exam area. Mikoto stared at Shin, her mouth slightly agape. Shin, how are you so strong? She was astonished. One punching a Chunin? Even most Jonin couldn't do that. It's not that I'm strong, it's that he was weak. Shin didn't consider himself strong. Compared to powerhouses like Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha, he was still a fledgling. Kushina, aren't you surprised? Did you know Shin was this strong? Mikoto looked at Kushina with envy. Living with Shin, she must have known all about his abilities. Of course I knew. And I'm stronger than that guy, let alone Shin. Kushina was indeed stronger than Kimura, the Chunin they had faced. She might lack combat experience, but her raw power was undeniable. Kushina's strength was probably at elite Chunin level. Considering her knowledge of ninjutsu and fu-injutsu, she might even be comparable to a Takebutsu Jonin. But her combat experience was lacking. Her actual fighting prowess was probably at the level of an elite Chunin. Mikoto was also quite strong. She had awakened the Sharingan, and even though it was only at the 1 Tomoe stage, it still gave her an edge against Chunin. Even without Shin's help, she could probably hold her own against Kimura. She was talented. They returned to the classroom to await their team assignments. Soon, Minato, Akiko, and Tsumen Yuzuka returned. They had been a team. You're back already? Did you pass? Minato asked. Failing the graduation exam would be embarrassing. You defeated the Chunin, right? Shin asked. They must have defeated the Chunin to be back so soon. Minato and Akiko were both strong, there was no way they would fail. Judging from his usual performance, Minato's strength was easily Chunin level. Akiko, chosen as a Jinchuriki candidate, had been trained by Mito and was probably just as strong as Minato. As for Tsume, she was from the Inuzuka clan and was also comparable to a Chunin. Even Minato alone could defeat a Chunin, let alone the 3 of them together. Yep. Minato was beaming. He was still young and inexperienced, so defeating a Chunin was a big deal to him. The future Minato, at his peak, wouldn't even blink at killing a Jonin. A while later, Nawaki returned with the Hyuga brothers. They had also defeated their opponent. Shin, that Chunin was so weak. We crushed him. Yeah, Chunin are pretty weak. Shin agreed. Shin, we're not officially Chunin yet. It's not good to say that. Hayashi said. I meant the average Chunin. Shin was referring to the average Chunin. There were exceptions, of course. The future protagonists, Naruto and Sasuke, and Might Dewey, Might Guy's father, were all Genin, but they were far from average. Soon, everyone in the class returned. As the elite class, they had all passed. If even the elite students couldn't pass, the regular classes would have no hope. Tanaka-sensei entered the classroom, carrying a box. You are all officially shinobi now. Here are your forehead protectors. Come and get them. The box contained their forehead protectors, a symbol of their graduation and their new status as shinobi. Also, team assignments will be announced tomorrow morning, so please come back then. Tanaka-sensei dismissed the class. Nawaki invited his friends to celebrate, including Shin and the others. As dusk fell, Shin and Kushina said goodbye to Mikoto and headed back to the Senju compound with Nawaki. Hey, Nawaki, where did you get the money? Shin asked. Nawaki had treated them to dinner. Where did he get the money? Sis hasn't borrowed any money from me for the past few years. I've been saving up. And now that I'm a shinobi, I'll be making my own money. Shin shook his head. Did Nawaki really think making money as a shinobi was easy? Small missions barely paid anything, and the high-paying ones were dangerous. Back at the compound, Shin stopped Nawaki before he could go to his own residence. Nawaki, you dream of becoming Hokage, right? Now that you're a shinobi, you'll be facing danger. Be careful. Nawaki paused, then smiled. Don't worry, I'll be fine. You and Kushina should be the ones being careful. Nawaki laughed. Shin and Kushina returned to Tsunada's courtyard. To their surprise, Tsunada was home. Surprised to see me? Tsunada asked, noticing their expressions. Yeah, you said you'd be gone for a few days on a mission. What are you doing here? Shin's eyes swept over Tsunada's figure. Her most noticeable change in the past 4 years was, well, there. He couldn't fathom how she had gone from an airport to a mountain range. The mission was cancelled. Now hurry up and make me dinner. I'm starving. Humphrey, why should Shin cook for you? We already ate. You're on your own. Kushina stuck her tongue out at Tsunada. Shin, if you make me dinner, I'll give you a surprise tomorrow. Tsunada ignored Kushina and looked at Shin expectantly. A surprise? Shin looked at her thoughtfully. Hey, what's with that look? I hate that know-it-all expression. Fine, I'll make you dinner. I look forward to your surprise. Shin smiled and headed to the kitchen. Kushina and Tsunada glared at each other. Why don't you make your own dinner? Why bother Shin? Kushina grumbled. Duh, if I could cook, I wouldn't be starving. Tsunada rolled her eyes. Tsunada's cooking skills were, well, let's just say they were on par with Kushina's. Wait, you said you already ate? Tsunada suddenly remembered Kushina's earlier comment. Yeah, we had yakiniku. Nawaki treated us. It was delicious, crispy and juicy. Kushina said, deliberately trying to make Tsunada jealous. Tsunada gritted her teeth. That little rascal, treating everyone but his own sister. Of course, Nawaki had no idea she was home. Chapter 33, Tsunada-sensei. It was 11 at night. Kushina tiptoed into Shin's room. Shin was still awake. Shin, I'm here to sleep with you. Kushina lunged towards him, but a hand shot out and grabbed her by the collar. Hey! Put me down, Tsunada. You meanie! Kushina shrieked, glaring at Tsunada. She hadn't expected Tsunada to be awake at this hour. Humphrey, I knew you'd sneak in here. Back to your own room, young lady. Tsunada dragged Kushina away, ignoring her protests. Kushina cast a pleading look at Shin, but he could only offer a helpless shrug. Tsunada, what's it to you if I sleep with Shin? Kushina demanded. You're both too old to be sharing a bed now. Tsunada ignored Kushina's further protests and tossed her back into her own room. Kushina pouted, defeated. The next morning, at breakfast, Kushina glared at Tsunada before dragging Shin off to school. Little brat, still glaring at me? Just you wait. Tsunada muttered under her breath. At the academy, Shin noticed that they were the last to arrive. Even Nawaki, who was usually late, was already there. The students, all wearing their forehead protectors, were a mix of excitement and nervousness. After the team assignments, they would be real shinobi, ready to go on missions. Shin, who do you think your Jonin-sensei will be? Nawaki asked excitedly. My guess is your sister, Tsunada. Shin replied. Tsunada had promised him a surprise yesterday, and he suspected this was it. Really? Did she tell you? Did she say who my sensei would be? Nawaki looked at Shin with anticipation. She didn't tell me. It's just a guess. Who do you want your sensei to be, Nawaki? Shin shook his head. It wasn't confirmed, but he was pretty sure Tsunada would be their Jonin-sensei. I want Orochimaru-sama. Nawaki's eyes shone with admiration. He seemed genuinely eager to be on Orochimaru's team. Shin gave him a strange look. Orochimaru? What was so appealing about him? Then he remembered that Orochimaru did have a certain charisma. In the original story, many were devoted to him. I don't understand why you like that creepy guy. Shin shook his head. He didn't dislike Orochimaru, but he didn't particularly like him either. The current Orochimaru wasn't as sinister or twisted as he would become. Orochimaru-sama is a genius, one of the strongest in Hidden Leaf Village. He's way stronger than my sister. Nawaki seemed to idolize Orochimaru. Don't let your sister hear you say that, or you'll be in trouble. Kushina warned. Settle down. Tanaka-sensei entered the classroom. Seeing the chaos, his face darkened. Nawaki scurried back to his seat, and the others followed suit. Tanaka-sensei was still a formidable presence. The team assignments began. One by one, Jonin entered the classroom, read out the names of their team members, and left. Team 3, Senju Nawaki, Uzumaki K, Hyuga Hisashi. Orochimaru entered, read the names, and left without a word. Nawaki's face lit up. He couldn't believe he was actually on Orochimaru's team. He rushed out with Kai and Hisashi. Team 5, Minato Namikaze, Uzumaki Akiko, and Yuzuka Tsume. Follow me. Jiraiya entered and called out the names. Minato and his team left. The classroom was getting emptier. Uzumaki Shin, Uzumaki Kushina, Mikoto Uchiha, you three are Team 9. Come with me. When only a few students remained, Tsunade entered and called out their names. Shin smiled. He had guessed correctly. Tsunade was their Jonin sensei. They followed Tsunade to a training ground in Hidden Leaf Village. Shin, you don't seem surprised at all. Tsunade observed. I already guessed it was you. This must be the surprise you mentioned. Humphrey, you guessed it again. How annoying. Kushina scowled. She wasn't thrilled about having Tsunade as their sensei. She almost wanted to request a transfer. Mikoto, however, was delighted. Not because of Tsunade, but because she was on the same team as Shin and Kushina. Now, I'll assess your abilities. Don't hold back. Tsunade said. She wasn't going to give them another test, but gauging their strength was necessary. As their Jonin sensei, she needed to know their capabilities to assign them appropriate missions. Is this assessment really necessary? Shin asked. Of course. I can't assign you missions without knowing your strength. Unless you want to do D-rank missions, then we can skip this. There were 5 mission ranks in Hidden Leaf Village. D-rank missions were the lowest, simple tasks with no combat or risk, such as weeding, babysitting, and cleaning the streets. C-rank missions involved some risk of injury, but no combat against enemy shinobi. B-rank missions were dangerous, often involving combat and the risk of death. A-rank missions were even more dangerous, often involving Jonin or stronger opponents. Genin weren't allowed to participate in these. S-rank missions were the most dangerous, involving the safety of the village or even the nation. They were rare, but when they did occur, they were a big deal. S-rank missions required elite Jonin or even Kage-level shinobi. They were the highest-paying missions, but also the most perilous. Fresh graduates usually started with D-rank missions. But it seemed Tsunade wasn't planning on giving them those. That was fine with Shin. He had no interest in those low-level missions. They wouldn't help him improve, and the pay was pathetic. Besides, he didn't need the money. Chapter 34, Shin's Full Power? Come on, attack me with all your might. If you impress me, I might even give you a reward. Tsunade tried to motivate them with the promise of a reward. You don't have to tell me twice. Kushina cracked her knuckles, eager to fight. If she could defeat Tsunade, she'd be ecstatic. Then let's begin. Tsunade didn't waste any time. She lunged at Kushina, her fist aimed at her head. Shin reacted instantly, pulling Kushina out of the way. He then grabbed Mikoto and leaped back, putting distance between them and Tsunade. Hey, Tsunade, you're an elite Jonin, attacking 3 Genin fresh out of the academy? And you're not even holding back? That's shameless. What did you say, brat? Tsunade glared at Shin. How dare he call her shameless? If they were ordinary Genin, she might have been going a bit overboard, but Shin, Kushina, and Mikoto were far from ordinary. She didn't know the extent of Shin's strength, but she knew he was a genius among geniuses. When he was 5, she had estimated his strength to be at elite Chunin level. Now, who knew? As for Kushina, as an Uzumaki, she couldn't be weak. And Mikoto Uchiha? Well, Tsunade didn't know her well, she was an Uchiha, she couldn't be weak either. Take this. This time, Tsunade targeted Shin. He had called her shameless, now he would pay. Fire style, fireball jutsu. Mikoto formed hand seals and unleashed a fireball at Tsunade. Tsunade was impressed. Not many Genin fresh out of the academy could use jutsu, let alone with such proficiency. Mikoto Uchiha was definitely a genius. Despite Mikoto being an Uchiha, Tsunade held no prejudice against her. She had gotten to know Mikoto and liked her personality. Unlike most Uchiha, Mikoto was gentle and kind. That was why she had been allowed to join this class. Tsunade channeled chakra to her fist, and with a powerful burst of air pressure, extinguished the fireball. Shin, let's see how much you've improved. Tsunade lunged at Shin, her fist propelled by a gust of wind that forced Kushina and Mikoto to retreat. She's serious. Shin clenched his fist. He didn't dodge, meeting Tsunade's attack head-on. The ground beneath his feet cracked. Tsunade was thrown back several meters, her arm numb. But the numbness was nothing to her. She used the mystical palm jutsu, and the numbness vanished. Brat, how are you so strong? Tsunade asked, bewildered. She had used her monstrous strength, yet she was the one sent flying. Simple. If you trained as hard as I do, you wouldn't be so weak. Shin said with a smirk. Weak? You think you're stronger than me just because you landed a lucky punch. I wasn't even using my full strength. Tsunade was amused. And you think I was? Shin's eyes gleamed. He decided to fight Tsunade seriously. This was a good opportunity to test his strength. He wasn't afraid to reveal his power anymore. He might as well let Tsunade help him gauge his progress. Tsunade, use your full strength, or I might just send you to the hospital. Shin's chakra flared, powerful enough to peel back the ground and shake the surrounding trees. Tsunade gulped. Was this kid a monster? How could he have so much chakra? She had thought her chakra reserves were impressive, but compared to Shin's, they were nothing. She felt like even a tailed beast's chakra might be comparable. She knew the Uzumaki clan had large chakra reserves, but this was ridiculous. Composing herself, Tsunade said. Your chakra is impressive, Shin, but chakra alone doesn't determine strength. You had to be able to use it effectively. You're right. But I'm strong in every aspect. As soon as he finished speaking, Shin vanished. A wave of intense danger washed over Tsunade, sending chills down her spine. It had been a long time since she had felt this threatened. But her reflexes were still sharp. She activated her monstrous strength and dodged. Just as she moved, Shin's axe kick landed where she had been standing. Missing his target, his foot slammed into the ground. Boom. A massive crater formed, the ground around Shin collapsing. Tsunade's jaw dropped. That kick was devastating. Even her strongest attack, the heavenly foot of pain, couldn't cause this much destruction. And his speed. She had barely dodged in time. If that had connected, she would have been done for. Missed. Too bad. Shin said with a smile. Brat, are you trying to kill me? Tsunade grumbled. If you couldn't dodge, I would have stopped at the last moment. I have control. What if you couldn't stop in time? Shin sighed. Well, then there's nothing I can do. I'll visit your grave next year. Kushina, who had been stunned into silence, burst out laughing. Her laughter snapped Mikoto out of her daze. She stared at Shin in disbelief. That kick must have been knee rank level. How could he be so strong? If they knew that wasn't even his full power, they might faint. Shin had only used 80% of his strength. He could have done even more damage. He had never neglected his taijutsu training. With shadow clones helping him train in ninjutsu and fuinjutsu, he had focused mostly on taijutsu and sword art. And sword art training also improved his taijutsu. With his perfect sage body, even without training, he would have been physically strong. But he had trained diligently. And he had also copied the physique of a taijutsu master. His physical strength couldn't be judged by his age. Not only could his chakra rival that of a tailed beast, but so could his strength. He wondered how he compared to the third Raikage in terms of physical prowess. Perhaps the current third Raikage was still stronger. After all, he was much older and had decades more experience. But in terms of potential, Shin was far superior. The third Raikage had already reached his peak, while Shin still had room to grow. Chapter 35, Learning the Strength of 100 Sealed Tsunade, are we going to continue our spar? Shin asked. Of course. You think I'm afraid of a little brat like you? Tsunade's chakra flared as she activated her strength of 100 seal. Her punches and kicks now carried monstrous power. Come on, show me what you've got. Tsunade was taking Shin seriously now. After his display of strength and speed, she couldn't underestimate him. She used a teleportation jutsu to close the distance, then aimed a punch at Shin's face. Trying to rearrange my face, are you? Shin blocked the punch and grabbed her wrist, flinging her away. Fire style, fireball jutsu. Shin unleashed a massive fireball, far more powerful than Mikoto's. It was a C-rank jutsu, but in his hands, it rivaled a B-rank. He had Mikoto to thank for this jutsu, she had taught it to him. That's incredible. Mikoto gasped, her eyes wide. Shin's fireball jutsu was over 10 times stronger than hers. Tsunade, airborne, quickly formed hand seals and used the substitution jutsu, replacing herself with a log. But the danger wasn't over. Shin appeared behind her, a Rasengan swirling in his hand. How is he so fast? Relying on her years of battle experience, Tsunade narrowly dodged the Rasengan. If I had used the adamantine sealing chains, you'd be down for the count, Tsunade. Shin remarked. The chains would have restrained her, leaving her vulnerable to the Rasengan. Tsunade had a weakness, her lack of long-range attacks. Relying solely on taijutsu put her at a disadvantage. Where did you learn that jutsu? It doesn't require any hand seals. Tsunade asked, referring to the Rasengan. She understood the significance of a jutsu that could be activated instantly. I created it. Shin replied casually. Minato hadn't invented it yet, so Shin could claim credit. You're full of surprises. I thought you were a genius, But you're a monster. Is that a compliment or an insult, Tsunade? Shin asked, rubbing his nose. Humphrey, let's continue. I won't be defeated by a brat like you. Hold on. Shin stopped her. He wasn't interested in fighting anymore. He had a good grasp of his strength now. Besides, fighting Tsunade with restrictions was boring. There's no point continuing. Let's call it a draw. Shin was being generous. If they continued, Tsunade would lose. You win, brat. I admit defeat. Tsunade glared at him. She knew she couldn't defeat him. It was embarrassing, but she wasn't afraid to admit it. How did you get so strong? Tsunade was an elite Jonin, bordering on Kage level. She might even reach that level soon. But she couldn't defeat a 10-year-old? No one would believe it. That's the difference between a genius and a common person. Reality is cruel. Shin's smug grin annoyed Tsunade. Was she not a genius? She was indignant, but compared to Shin, she didn't seem that special. No, that wasn't right. She was a genius, it was just that Shin was a monster. By the way, Tsunade, you mentioned a reward. I think we earned it. Shin smiled. You did. Here's the strength of 100 seal. Since I'm your sensei now, I should teach you something. Tsunade handed them the scroll, surprising Shin. This was her signature technique. Besides medical ninjutsu, the strength of 100 seal was what she was known for. But don't teach it to anyone else. Tsunade said sternly. She was willing to teach them, but she didn't want it spreading. We're not idiots. We won't. Shin assured her. Thank you, Tsunade-sensei. Mikoto said gratefully. Look at Mikoto, so polite. She even called me sensei. Learn from her, you too. Tsunade glared at Shin and Kushina. Kushina glared right back, while Shin focused on the strength of 100 seal scroll. It involved precise chakra control, focusing chakra throughout the body, and releasing it in a burst of power, strong enough to shatter walls. Shin studied the scroll and realized it wasn't that difficult. It was simply a technique for unleashing explosive power with chakra. This is easy. Shin focused, controlling his chakra with ease. With his powerful mind and chakra control, this was child's play. He channeled chakra throughout his body, feeling it coat him like armor. So that was how Tsunade could withstand the recoil. The chakra acted as a buffer. This meant the strength of 100 seal wasn't just for offense, it could also be used defensively. Tsunade gaped at him. She had been annoyed when Shin called the technique easy, but now he was using it. He might not be displaying its power, but she could tell he had mastered it. But he was using it differently. She usually focused the chakra in one area, like her fist or leg. Shin, however, was channeling it throughout his body. Was this the privilege of having massive chakra reserves? You really are a monster. Tsunade said, shaking her head. It's not that difficult. Anyone with good chakra control can learn it. Shin was telling the truth. The strength of 100 seal was powerful and versatile, but it was easy to learn, no harder than a C-rank jutsu. Of course, that was assuming you had excellent chakra control. Kushina and Mikoto also started practicing. They couldn't master it instantly like Shin, but with his guidance, they learned it within half a day. Chapter 36, Shin's abnormal dojutsu. You've all mastered tree climbing and water walking? No wonder you learned the strength of 100 seal so quickly. Tsunade was no longer surprised by their rapid progress. Well, I guess I have nothing left to teach you. Let's start taking missions tomorrow. She sounded a bit disappointed. Tsunade, want to learn a jutsu? Shin asked, a Rasengan swirling to life in his hand. Tsunade had taught them her secret technique, he didn't mind returning the favor. You're going to teach me that no-hand seals jutsu? Tsunade was surprised. Not many shinobi were willing to share their jutsu. Of course. You taught us your secret strength of 100 seal technique, it's only fair that I teach you something in return. Besides, don't you want to learn it? Well, since you're offering, I suppose I'll learn it. Tsunade said with a playful arrogance. Shin's lips twitched. He hadn't expected Tsunade to be so tsundere. He explained the Rasengan training method to Tsunade and even provided personal guidance. But even so, it wasn't something that could be mastered quickly. It would take at least a few days. This Rasengan is pretty good, but I don't see how it's useful for me. Tsunade said. No-hand seal's jutsu were powerful, but her fists were just as strong. Why bother with the Rasengan when she could just punch her enemies? Don't underestimate the Rasengan. It has a lot of potential. The basic Rasengan is a non-elemental jutsu, but you can add chakra nature transformations to create even stronger jutsu. Shin explained. In the original story, Naruto had taken the Rasengan to incredible heights. And the Rasengan isn't limited to close-range combat. It can be used for long-range attacks as well. Shin held out his hand, chakra gathering and swirling into a Rasengan. He increased the chakra output, the pale blue sphere deepening in color. Then he threw it. The Rasengan struck a rock 30 meters away, exploding on impact, pulverizing the rock and creating a small crater. You can throw the Rasengan? Kushina gasped. Yes, but you need to make it more condensed and stable. Naruto, in the original story, couldn't throw the Rasengan, but Shin, after some research, had figured it out. The reason the Rasengan couldn't be thrown was that its unstable rotation would cause it to dissipate once it left the user's control. By increasing its stability, it could be thrown. But this came with a drawback: increased chakra consumption. Making the Rasengan more stable required more chakra. A thrown Rasengan consumed 3 times the chakra of a regular Rasengan. It was a trade-off, but Shin had chakra to spare. For him, the benefits outweighed the costs. Kushina and Tsunoda's eyes lit up as Shin explained how to throw the Rasengan. Mikoto, however, sighed. Shin had already taught her the Rasengan, but she couldn't throw it. She didn't have enough chakra. The Uchiha clan had decent chakra reserves, but they couldn't compare to the Senju and Uzumaki. Mikoto could barely create 2 Rasengan. It was an A-rank jutsu, after all. Even though it was less chakra-intensive than other A-rank jutsu, it still required a significant amount. Let's head back for today. Meet me at this training ground tomorrow. Tsunoda said. You two go ahead. I'll train here for a bit. Tsunoda nodded and left with Kushina and Mikoto. Kushina had wanted to stay, but Tsunoda dragged her away. Once they were gone, Shin activated the mind's eye of Kagura, confirming that there was no one within several dozen kilometers. His eyes turned crimson, 3 black tomui swirling. The tomui spun faster and faster, merging into a 5-pointed shuriken shape. The Mangekyo Sharingan. The Sharingan was a reflection of the heart. When it evolved from the 3 tomui stage to the Mangekyo Sharingan, it awakened 3 new abilities. Besides the Susanoo, which was common to all Mangekyo Sharingan, the other 2 abilities were unique to each user, born from their deepest desires. The Mangekyo Sharingan could awaken incredibly powerful abilities, like Obito Uchiha's Kamyu and Shizue Uchiha's Koto Umatsukami. And Shin's 2 abilities were perhaps even more broken. His left eye's ability was Yamatsu Hirasaka, the ultimate space-time ninjutsu. It allowed the user to travel between dimensions instantaneously, without the need for any markings or formulas. It was far superior to the Flying Thunder God Jutsu. It was a jutsu that could only be used by those who possessed all 3 dojutsu, the Sharingan, Byakugan, and Rinnegan. In the original story, even including Boruto, only Kaguya Otsutsuki and Urashiki Otsutsuki could use this jutsu. But as Shin's Mangekyo ability, he could use it even without the Byakugan and Rinnegan. His right eye's ability was even more broken. It was called Tenmomai, and if Yamatsu Hirasaka controlled space, Tenmomai controlled time. It allowed Shin to rewind his personal time by 3 minutes. 3 minutes might not seem like much, but in battle, it was a game changer. If he was injured, he could rewind time and undo the damage. Unless someone could kill him instantly, they wouldn't be able to harm him. He could be injured 1 second and perfectly fine the next. And combined with Yamatsu Hirasaka, his survivability was practically unmatched. Am I really that afraid of death? Shin chuckled to himself. He decided to test his new abilities. He took out a kunai and slashed his arm. His clothes tore, but his skin was unharmed. Shin blinked. Had his skin become so tough that even a kunai couldn't pierce it? Looks like I'll have to use the big guns. He took out a scroll and unsealed a sword. He made a small cut on his arm, then activated Tenmomai. The wound vanished instantly. His clothes, however, remained torn. It seemed Tenmomai only affected his body. Clothes were external objects, the jutsu didn't apply to them. The chakra and dojutsu strain, however, was significant. Using Tenmomai didn't rewind the chakra and dojutsu exhaustion he had experienced. Chapter 37, Accepting a Mission. Shin experimented with Yamatsu Hirasaka. This technique could be used offensively, to shorten the distance for long-range jutsu, or to disrupt and ambush opponents. It could also be used defensively, for evasion and escape. It was incredibly versatile. The chakra cost was manageable, but the strain on his eyes was significant. His Mangekyo Sharingan had limited ocular power. If he didn't have the perfect sage body, using these abilities a few times would risk blindness. Blindness was caused by depleting ocular power. Once depleted, the Mangekyo Sharingan's power couldn't be replenished. There were 2 ways to overcome this: evolve it into the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, or transplant Hashirama's cells and survive. With his perfect sage body, Shin didn't have to worry about permanent blindness. His ocular power would regenerate, but he was concerned about running out mid-battle. Regeneration took time. In a fight, he wouldn't have time to wait for his eyes to recover. If he evolved his Mangekyo Sharingan into the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, he would have practically unlimited ocular power. The regeneration rate would match the consumption rate. He needed to find a way to evolve his Sharingan quickly. He wasn't worried, though. As long as he had time, he could evolve his Sharingan naturally. After awakening the Mangekyo Sharingan, Shin had sensed a resonance between his eyes and his body. Influenced by his perfect sage body, his ocular power was slowly increasing. Once it reached a certain threshold, his Mangekyo Sharingan would evolve into the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. The sage body and the Sharingan were indeed complementary, representing yin and yang, the perfect balance. Time to head back. Kushina will be looking for me. Shin headed towards the Senju compound, his sword strapped to his back. This wasn't just any sword, it was the one he had taken from the Uzumaki clan shrine. After some research, he discovered it was one of the Kusanagi swords. There were 11 Kusanagi swords in the Naruto world. Itachi Uchiha's Totsuka blade was one of them. Shin's Kusanagi sword didn't have the lengthening ability of Orochimaru's Kusanagi sword or the sealing ability of Itachi's Totsuka blade, but it did have the chakra conducting ability of Sasuke's sword. Its greatest strengths were its durability and sharpness. It could cut through steel like butter. Shin didn't need any special abilities. He just needed a sword that could withstand his strength and swordsmanship. In his hands, it was the ultimate weapon. Back at the courtyard, he saw a feast laid out on the table. His face paled. Who made this? He looked at Tsunade and Kushina suspiciously. The food looked and smelled delicious, but to him, it was poison. I did. Mikoto said, emerging from the kitchen with a pot of miso soup. Oh, Mikoto. That's a relief. Shin sat down, ignoring Tsunade and Kushina's glares. Mikoto, you didn't go home? Why, Shin? Don't you want me here? Mikoto's gentle gaze made Shin feel a strange sense of danger. Was it just his imagination? Mikoto was so sweet, how could she be dangerous? Of course I'm glad you're here, Mikoto. I was just curious. I asked her to stay. Tsunade said. Knowing Mikoto had no family, Tsunade had invited her to stay, hoping she would keep Kushina company and prevent her from sneaking into Shin's room at night. Shin and Kushina were too old to be sharing a bed. Tsunade didn't want to see that. The next morning, Tsunade took Shin, Kushina, and Mikoto to the Hokage's office to accept the mission. They didn't need to see the Hokage for ordinary missions, he'd be overwhelmed. But as new graduates, if they wanted to take on missions above D rank, they needed his approval. Sandame, I want to take on a higher level mission. Please sign this application. Tsunade placed the form in front of Hiruzen. A higher level mission? Hiruzen frowned, glancing at Shin, Kushina, and Mikoto. No. He said, shaking his head. They're new graduates. They should start with D rank missions to gain experience. What kind of experience? How to be better farmers. So they can become farmers or pig breeders if they fail as shinobi? Hiruzen's lips twitched. Tsunade had a point. D-rank missions were mostly useless and didn't provide any real training. But what if they're in danger? I'll take responsibility. Just sign the form. Tsunade slammed the form on his desk. Fine. Hiruzen sighed and signed the form. With Tsunade leading the team, he wasn't that worried. Tsunade took them to the mission assignment desk. What kind of mission do you want? She asked. Something with blood. Shin said after exchanging glances with Kushina and Mikoto. The type of mission didn't matter, as long as it helped Kushina and Mikoto grow. For a new Gainian, the best way to grow was to kill someone. If you didn't have the resolve to kill, you shouldn't be a shinobi. It wasn't a merciful profession, killing was part of the job. Tsunade nodded. Let's take this C-rank mission, bandit extermination. She handed the form to the mission desk clerk and accepted the mission. Bandit extermination was a common mission for Gainin teams. Being a bandit in the shinobi world was a tough job. New graduates, after completing a few D-rank missions, would move on to higher-level missions. Facing enemy shinobi directly was out of the question. Sending new graduates against experienced shinobi was suicide. But they needed to experience real combat, to kill, to become true shinobi. Killing innocent people was unacceptable. Shinobi weren't executioners. So, bandits were the next best thing. They were a menace, and killing them was a public service. In the shinobi world, bandits were both hated and pitied. They were constantly being hunted, serving as stepping stones for new graduates. Alert, new mission available. View? The system's voice echoed in Shin's mind. Shin opened the mission panel and saw the bandit extermination mission. Bandit extermination, eliminate the bandits near Nishimura. Reward, 1 common replication card. Failure, no penalty. Chapter 38, marry you if I can't find anyone else. A system mission. Shin was finally seeing another mission, The first one since arriving in Hidden Leaf Village 5 years ago. And a chance to get another replication card. Even a common card was valuable to him. Currently, he had 3 replication cards. The system gifted him 1 card annually. In the past 4 years, he had received 4 cards, 1 advanced and 3 common. He hadn't used the advanced cards yet. They were precious, capable of copying KK Genkai. He had used the common cards to copy Sharingan prowess. That was how he had awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan. By accumulating enough ocular power through repeated copying, he had forced his Sharingan to evolve. He had copied the Sharingan prowess of Uchiha Jonin 7 times. Combined with his own training, that was enough to push his Sharingan to the next level. Shin immediately accepted the mission. He was going on this mission anyway, getting a replication card was a bonus. System, will you issue missions that match the missions I take on? Shin was excited by the possibility. If that were the case, he could become a mission master, grinding missions to farm system rewards. Do not get your hopes up, master. There is no pattern to the system's mission assignments. The system's response dashed his hopes, leaving him disappointed. Shin, let's go. What are you daydreaming about? Kushina nudged him. Shin snapped back to reality and followed Kushina and Mikoto. They didn't know he had been communicating with the system. Tsunade-san. What a coincidence. We meet again. A ninja with light blue hair, a handsome face, and a Jonin vest greeted Tsunade. Tsunade frowned. Kato-dan, this is the 5th time this week. The first time was a coincidence. The second time, maybe. But the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Really? Her bluntness made Don's smile falter. That's Kato-dan? Why is Tsunade so cold to him? Shin observed Dan. Dan looked at Shin and the others, seemingly trying to deflect the awkwardness. These must be your students. You're Uzumaki Shin, right? I'm Kato-dan. Nice to meet you. Dan smiled at Shin. But Shin sensed malice. He trusted his instincts. After awakening the mind's eye of Kagura, he had gained the ability to sense negative emotions directed at him. Dan might be smiling, but his malice was clear to Shin. Shin frowned. He had never interacted with Dan before. Why the hostility? Was it because of Tsunade? Was he jealous of Shin's closeness to Tsunade? But that didn't make sense. Who would be jealous of a 10-year-old? Whatever the reason, Dan clearly disliked him. Shin wasn't going to be polite. He glanced at Dan, then ignored him completely. Don's smile became strained. His eyes flashed with anger, then he turned and left with his team. He was also a Jonin sensei, leading a team of geinin who had graduated last year. You don't seem to like him very much. Tsunade looked at Shin with amusement. Are you jealous that he's talking to me? Do you have a crush on me, little Shin? Even though you're young, if you confess your feelings, I might be impressed by your courage and give you a chance. Shin's lips twitched. Tsunade, you're so self-centered. I was rude to him because he was giving me bad vibes. It has nothing to do with you. Yeah, Tsunade, you're so full of yourself. Shin likes me, don't you, Shin? Kushina suddenly clung to Shin's arm. Brat, I gave you a chance, and you didn't take it. Tsunade raised her fist playfully, aiming for Shin's head. He dodged easily. Tsunade, with that violent temper, you'll never get married. Shin teased. Tsunade scowled. If I can't find anyone else, I'll marry you. And if you refuse, I'll castrate you. Shin quickly backed away, feeling a chill in his nether regions. Kushina's expression changed. Shin didn't like violent girls. Should she try to be more gentle? She glanced at Mikoto, her eyes filled with suspicion. Mikoto was gentle. Would Shin like her? And from Kushina's observations, Mikoto seemed to like Shin. She was a rival. She had thought Tsunade, the cougar, was her biggest threat, but it seemed Mikoto was the one to watch out for. Mikoto was confused by Kushina's sudden hostility. She had no idea what was going on in Kushina's mind. Shin, you said Dan was giving you bad vibes? Tsunade looked at Shin. Yeah, don't you believe me? Tsunade shook her head. I believe you. And there's something else that's been bothering me. What is it? Shin asked curiously. Want to know? A mischievous smile spread across Tsunade's face. Shin had a bad feeling about this. If you want to know, come here and let me pinch your cheeks. On second thought, I don't need to know that badly. Shin rolled his eyes. Brat, don't try to weasel your way out of this. You promised to let me pinch your cheeks if I kept your strength a secret. What promise? Sorry, I have a bad memory. Kushina, did I promise Tsunade anything? Shin asked innocently. Nope, I don't remember anything. Kushina shook her head. She wasn't going to let Tsunade take advantage of Shin. Tsunade glared at them. These two brats. Fine, I'll tell you. Kato-dan asked me about you a while back. I thought it was strange, But I didn't think much of it at the time. Tsunade said, giving in. Shin frowned. Dan had asked about him? They had never even interacted. Why would he do that? Had he met Dan before? Shin thought it over, but he couldn't think of anything. He had been keeping a low profile in Hidden Leaf Village. He didn't know enough about Dan to understand his motives. Chapter 39, Pitiful Bandits finally out of the village. Kushina skipped ahead, a cheerful grin on her face. She hadn't left Hidden Leaf Village since arriving. Mikoto also looked around curiously, taking in the sights. Hey, it's more dangerous outside the village. Don't let your guard down. Tsunade warned. Most shinobi died because of carelessness. It was important to be vigilant at all times. Okay. Kushina ran back to Shin, who seemed lost in thought. Shin, are you still thinking about that guy? She asked, nudging him. Yeah, it's hard not to. Shin nodded. He was contemplating how to eliminate Kato Dan. Since Dan harbored ill will towards him, he was an enemy. And the best way to deal with an enemy was to nip the threat in the bud. But there was no opportunity in Hidden Leaf Village. If he was discovered, his only option would be to defect. He was enjoying his life in Hidden Leaf Village. He didn't want to become a missing ninja, constantly on the run. There's a shinobi approaching. Shin turned and looked back. Tsunade immediately followed his gaze. She didn't see anyone, but she trusted Shin's judgment. He had proven himself to be reliable. Shin's eyes widened as he saw the approaching shinobi. It was Kato Dan. Tsunade-san, finally caught up to you. Dan and his three-man team arrived, smiles plastered on their faces. What are you doing here, Dan-san? Tsunade asked coldly. Dan, unfazed by her hostility, replied smoothly. The Sandaime Hokage sent me to assist you with your mission. Really? Tsunade eyed him skeptically. Did they really need assistance for a simple bandit extermination mission? We don't need your help. Go back. Tsunade waved them away dismissively. Dan feigned a troubled expression. I apologize, Tsunade-san, but these are the Hokage's orders. I can't disobey. Tsunade, since it's the Hokage's kind intention, let's accept their help. It'll make things easier for us, Shin said with a smile, as if welcoming him. Tsunade, Kushina, and Mikoto looked at Shin strangely. They didn't believe his act for a second. Dan's smile faltered. Shin's expression seemed familiar. It was the same fake smile he himself often wore. Fine, follow us. But don't get in our way. Tsunade said, glancing at Dan and his team. She didn't know what Shin was planning, but she decided to play along. Dan-san, we look forward to working with you. Shin said with a smile. Likewise. Dan replied, mirroring Shin's expression. Ugh, that's so fake. Kushina muttered, shivering. Tsunade and Mikoto shared her sentiment. With Dan and his team tagging along, the atmosphere became awkward. No one spoke. Shinobi traveled quickly. Within half a day, they reached their destination, Nishimura. Where are the bandits? Kushina asked, eager for action. Not far from here. See that mountain? According to the mission details, they're hiding there. 6 of them, all civilians. Only 6? Shin was surprised. He had expected a larger group. But he had overestimated the bandit population. Within Land of Fire, bandits were rare, constantly hunted by shinobi. After searching for half an hour, they finally found the bandits. Shin had expected some kind of hideout, but they were living in a cave. How pathetic. And the 6 bandits were all skinny and malnourished. Were they really bandits? They looked more like refugees. Are those really bandits? They look so pitiful. Kushina said. I guess so. That's what the intel said. Even Tsunade wasn't sure. If these were bandits, they were the most pathetic bandits she had ever seen. Boss, look. Women. One of the skinny bandits called out to their leader, a lanky man standing in the middle. No shit, I have eyes. Kill the men, keep the women. The leader drew a rusty sword and charged forward. Are you brain dead? Can't you see we're shinobi? Do you not see our forehead protectors? Shin was speechless. Fighting these guys was an insult to his skills. Mikoto, Kushina, I'll leave them to you. I believe in you. Shin said. This mission was mainly for Mikoto and Kushina's benefit. Shin had killed enemy ninja when he was 5. Kushina and Mikoto were nervous, despite the bandits' obvious lack of strength. Even Kushina, who had been eager for action, froze. Kushina, Mikoto, if you don't do something, this guy is going to kill me. Shin looked at the bandit leader, who was about to reach him, and sighed dramatically. Huh? Kushina and Mikoto snapped out of their daze. Seeing the bandit leader about to strike Shin, their eyes turned serious. They threw their kunai with deadly accuracy. Thud. Thud. The bandit leader's eyes widened as one kunai pierced his neck and the other his heart. Mikoto and Kushina ignored the dead bandit and rushed to Shin. Shin, are you okay? Why didn't you dodge? If I dodged, you two would have hesitated even longer. Shin said. But that was dangerous. What if you got hurt? Kushina glared at him. I didn't get hurt, did I? And do you really think he could hurt me? A malnourished civilian? If that guy could hurt him, he might as well commit suicide. You're not scared at all, are you? Shin asked with a smile. Kushina and Mikoto finally looked at the dead bandit. Kushina's expression was grim, while Mikoto's was pale. They had been too worried about Shin to pay attention to the bandit they had killed. Now that the adrenaline was wearing off, the reality of what they had done was sinking in. Kushina had seen far worse during the destruction of Hidden Eddy Village, but taking a life, even a bandit's, still weighed heavily on her. Mikoto, who hadn't experienced such trauma, was shaken. Tsunade remained silent, letting them process their emotions. This was an important step for every shinobi. Chapter 40, Kato Dan, a root member? Kushina, Mikoto, they're getting away. Shin pointed at the remaining 5 bandits, who were fleeing in panic after their leader's death. Kushina reacted first. Without using any jutsu, she threw 2 shuriken, killing 2 bandits instantly. Mikoto, her initial shock subsiding, activated her Sharingan and unleashed a fireball jutsu, incinerating another bandit. She then threw a kunai, taking out the 4th. Mikoto might look gentle, but she was a fierce fighter when necessary. Shin finished off the last bandit with a kunai. Congratulations, Master. Mission complete. Reward, 1 common replication card. Looks like you've taken care of the bandits. Kato Dan arrived, having witnessed the last bandit's death. Tsunade frowned at him. I thought you were waiting at the bottom of the mountain. Why are you here? Dan hadn't followed them up the mountain. I was a bit worried, so I came to check. It seems the bandits have been dealt with. Your students are quite impressive, Tsunade-san. Dan said with a smile. Dan-san, where are the 3 genin you brought with you? Shin's sharp gaze made Dan feel exposed. They didn't come with me. I left them waiting at the bottom. Dan replied, his smile stiffening. Dan-san, are you familiar with the Uzumaki clan's secret technique, the mind's eye of Kagura? It can sense chakra within a radius of several dozen kilometers and pinpoint their location. Dan's smile faltered, then vanished completely. Everyone's chakra is unique. I memorized the chakra signatures of the 3 genin you brought with you. But I can't sense them. Care to explain, Dan-san? Tsunade's eyes narrowed. She knew about the mind's eye of Kagura. Her grandmother, Mido, had told her about it. It was a powerful sensory technique, comparable to the Byakugan. She believed Shin. If he couldn't sense those genin, there were only 2 possibilities: they had left, or they were dead. They couldn't have left, even she couldn't cover that much distance in such a short time. That left only one possibility: they were dead. Kato Dan, explain yourself. Tsunade was ready to apprehend him. Tsunade-san, you're not going to believe this brat, are you? Dan said, frowning. I believe Shin. He's more trustworthy than you. Tsunade channeled chakra to her fist, creating a gust of wind. Dan gulped, his heart pounding. He knew how strong Tsunade's punches were. She could kill him with a single blow. Also, I sensed 5 unfamiliar chakra signatures at the bottom of the mountain. Judging by their strength, they're at least Jonin level, maybe even elite. Shin stared at Dan. Those 5 shinobi were definitely connected to him. Looks like I've been found out. Dan dropped the act. There was no point pretending anymore. His previously gentle expression turned cold. He took out a signal flare and launched it into the air. Tsunade, don't attack yet. Shin stopped her. Hey, brat, what are you doing? This guy is clearly up to something. We need to apprehend him. Relax, I'm ready for whatever he throws at us. But first, I have some questions for him. Shin interrupted Tsunade, his eyes fixed on Dan. Dan-san, we have no quarrel. Why do you dislike me so much? This was what Shin wanted to know. He hadn't done anything to provoke Dan. I'll tell you now that I've been exposed. It's Lord Denzo's order. He wants me to bring you back. Dan glared at Shin. Denzo. You're working for Denzo. Shin was surprised. That bastard Denzo. Tsunade clenched her fists in anger. Kushina and Mikoto didn't know who Denzo was, but they understood that Dan was the enemy. They prepared for battle. I can't believe it. But why would Denzo target me? Shin was baffled. He had been keeping a low profile. Why was Denzo interested in him? Was he simply too dazzling to ignore? Shin couldn't help but feel a bit narcissistic. I don't know Lord Denzo's reasons. My mission is to bring you back and eliminate Tsunade. Dan looked at Tsunade. His mission was twofold: capture Shin and kill Tsunade. That bastard wants me dead? Tsunade was furious. She wanted to pulverize Dan and then tear Denzo apart. Just then, Don's reinforcements arrived, 5 masked ninja, dressed similarly to Anbu. They were probably Root members. Shin's eyes narrowed as he noticed the only red-haired ninja among them. Uzumaki Hikaru, is that you? Among the Uzumaki survivors who came to Hidden Leaf Village, besides Shin and Kushina, there were Akiko, Kei, and Hikaru, the only adult. Shin hadn't expected him to join Root and become Denzo's lackey. He suddenly understood why Denzo had targeted him. Shin's lineage was a secret. He had both Uzumaki and Uchiha blood. Kushina didn't know the full details, and neither did Akiko or Kai. They were too young. But Hikaru knew. If he had told Denzo, it would explain his interest in Shin. He probably wanted to capture Shin for research. After all, who knew what kind of power a combination of Uzumaki and Uchiha blood could produce? Denzo would be intrigued. As for killing Tsunade, that was also understandable. It would weaken both the Senju clan and the Sandaime Hokage. 2 birds with 1 stone. Shin, you said that's Uzumaki Hikaru? Kushina asked, moving closer to Shin. Shin nodded. His senses couldn't be wrong. He could sense the Uzumaki's sage body. The Uzumaki's chakra, due to their sage body, was different from others. A sensitive sensor could detect it. Shin, with his mind's eye of Kagura, was practically the best sensor there was. He hadn't been able to sense Hikaru from a distance, but now that they were close, there was no mistaking it. Betrayed by my own clan. How unpleasant. Shin's eyes glowed red, his 3 Tomoe Sharingan fixated on Hikaru, killing intent radiating from him. Chapter 41, Killing Elite Jonin like chopping vegetable Sharingan? Everyone was stunned, even Hikaru. It wasn't just that Shin had the Sharingan, it was that it was a 3 Tomoe Sharingan. Shin, why do you have the Sharingan? Tsunade asked, shocked. Shin scratched his head. It's a long story. Let's deal with these guys first. Kushina, Mikoto, stay back. He said to the girls. The enemies were all Jonin level or higher, Kushina and Mikoto wouldn't be much help. Seeing his serious expression, they nodded and retreated. Uzumaki Hikaru, allow me to release you from this world of suffering. No need to thank me, we're practically family. Shin's 3 Tomoe Sharingan spun rapidly as he focused on Hikaru. Don't look into his eyes. Beware of Sharingan Ganjutsu. Dan shouted. But Shin didn't use Ganjutsu. The 3 Tomoe merged, and his Mangekyo Sharingan activated. Yamatsu Hirasaka. A dark portal opened in front of Shin. He drew his Kusanagi sword and thrust it into the portal. Thud. Hikaru stared in disbelief as a sword pierced his heart from behind. The light faded from his eyes. Shin withdrew his sword. Hikaru collapsed, a dark portal appearing behind him. Yamatsu Hirasaka had opened a dimensional path from Shin to Hikaru's back. Shin's sword had passed through the portal, killing Hikaru instantly. Yamatsu Hirasaka wasn't just for defense and escape, it was even more effective for offense and surprise attacks. Hikaru's instant death shocked Dan. The other 4 Root members looked at Shin warily. What was that jutsu? Dan had a bad feeling about this. They had only been concerned about Tsunade, but this kid was unexpectedly powerful. The Mangekyo Sharingan? Tsunade was even more shocked than when she first learned Shin had the Sharingan. The Sharingan wasn't uncommon, the Uchiha clan was still around. But the Mangekyo Sharingan was rare. As far as she knew, only Madara Uchiha possessed it. Seems effective enough. Shin flicked his sword, the blood splattering harmlessly on the ground. Fire style, Dragon Fire Jutsu. Wind style, Great Breakthrough. One of the Root members unleashed a torrent of flames shaped like a dragon, while another used wind style to amplify its power. Tsunade's eyes widened. Even she would be in danger if hit by that. Most shinobi, except for taijutsu specialists, were physically frail. Tsunade was skilled in taijutsu, but that was due to her strength of 100 seal. Without it, her taijutsu was average at best. She was primarily a medical ninja. She had to dodge. As she retreated, she saw Shin standing still, seemingly frozen in fear. She panicked. Shin, what are you doing? Dodge. She tried to reach him, but it was too late. The fire dragon was upon him. Nice teamwork. Now taste your own medicine. Shin used Yamatsu Hirasaka again, a portal opening in front of him. The fire dragon entered the portal and vanished. Then, another portal opened above Dan and his team. The fire dragon emerged, roaring towards them. They were too close, caught completely off guard. 2 died instantly, and 3 were severely injured. Dan survived, but he suffered extensive burns, his hair and face singed. That's some power. A B rank jutsu, amplified by wind style, reaching A rank level. Shin observed the damage with a critical eye. Thwack. Tsunade smacked him on the head, glaring at him. Are you trying to give me a heart attack? She wanted to hit him again, but Shin dodged. I'm fine, aren't I? Shin. Kushina launched herself at Shin, tears in her eyes, and hugged him tightly. She had been terrified. Shin, are you hurt? Mikoto checked him for injuries. I'm fine. Not a single hair out of place. Tsunade, hurry up and attack. They're getting away. Shin pointed at Dan and the two surviving root members, who were trying to flee. The two who had died, including Hikaru, were Jonin. Dan and the other two were elite Jonin. Their experience had allowed them to survive the surprise attack. But they knew they were outmatched. They were retreating. Tsunade glared at them, her face contorted in anger. Trying to run? Not so fast. If it weren't for Shin's unexpected strength, they would be dead. She couldn't take on 3 elite Jonin alone. They could even kill her if they worked together. She wasn't at her peak yet. And if Don's plan hadn't been exposed, he could have launched a surprise attack and killed her easily. Denzo had sent a strong team, a testament to how much he valued Tsunade's life. But he hadn't anticipated Shin's strength. He probably hadn't even considered Shin, Kushina, and Mikoto as threats. This time, he had miscalculated. 3 elite Jonin and 3 regular Jonin. Denzo had suffered a significant loss, especially with Kato Dan, who was likely a valuable asset. Tsunade charged forward, intercepting one of the fleeing elite Jonin. Dan and the other elite Jonin split up, escaping in different directions. Tsunade couldn't stop them both. 3 elite Jonin, running away like scared dogs. How pathetic. Shin watched them go. He had to act now, or they would escape. Yamatsu Hirasaka. He stepped through a portal, appearing behind one of the fleeing Jonin. His sword flashed, slicing the men in two. Ah! Kushina screamed. It was a gruesome sight. She had followed Shin through the portal. Shin looked at the bisected corpse, blood pooling on the ground. It was indeed gory. He hadn't meant to be so brutal, but it was his first time killing with a sword. He hadn't controlled his strength properly. And the Kusanagi sword was incredibly sharp. But still, he had just killed an elite Jonin. It had been as easy as chopping vegetables. With space-time ninjutsu and his lightning-fast swordsmanship, killing was a simple matter, especially against weaker opponents. It was a massacre. Chapter 42, Killing Kato Dan. Returned to the village after killing the elite Jonin, Shin used Yamatsu Hirasaka to return to Mikoto and Kushina. Mikoto sighed in relief when she saw them. Kushina, what's wrong? She noticed Kushina's pale face and worried she might be injured. Kushina glared at Shin, then shook her head at Mikoto. I'm fine. Just a bit queasy after seeing that mess. Shin, Kato Dan got away. Mikoto reported. Shin looked in the direction Dan had fled. Despite his injuries, the elite Jonin was still fast. Let him run. Some people run in circles. Shin said cryptically. He then turned his attention to the elite Jonin fighting Tsunade. Tsunade had the upper hand, but the Jonin was holding his own with his superior experience. Too slow, Tsunade. Let me help. Flash slash. Without using Yamatsu Hirasaka, relying solely on his speed, Shin appeared next to the Jonin in a flash. His Kusanagi sword blurred, too fast for even Tsunade to see. When Shin sheathed his sword, the Jonin collapsed, 8 fatal wounds appearing on his body. Tsunade gasped. It had taken less than a second, and Shin had landed 8 blows in that time. You have to be decisive in battle. If you fought like that, I'd finish my dinner before you finished your opponent. Shin said, half teasing, half boasting. Tsunade was speechless. Was that really an elite Jonin he had just killed? Elite Jonin were veterans, the strongest forces in each village. Killing one was no easy feat. But Shin had done it in under a second. And his speed. Even she couldn't have dodged that. Shin, are you a monster? How are you so strong? Tsunade asked, bewildered. Monster? What are you talking about? I'm a genius. A hard-working genius. Shin looked indignant. I have talent, I work 10 times harder than anyone else, and I have cheats. Why wouldn't I be strong? Tsunade stared at him, speechless. He had a point. But what did he mean by cheats? What about Kato Dan and the other elite Jonin? Tsunade decided to ignore the cheats comment for now. The other elite Jonin is dead. Dan is still running. He got away? Tsunade frowned. I said he's still running, not that he got away. Some people run in circles, remember? Shin activated Yamatsu Hirasaka, opening a portal in front of them. Kato Dan stumbled out of the portal. He stared at Shin and Tsunade, his burned face contorted in confusion. As he had been fleeing, a portal had suddenly appeared in front of him. He had been too close to stop and had run straight into it. Not so fast, Dan. Try running now. If you escape, I'll admit defeat. Shin smirked. With the mind's eye of Kagura and Yamatsuhaya Arasaka, there was no way Dan could escape. Dan was in a tough spot. He couldn't use his spirit transformation jutsu here. If he did, he'd be killed instantly. It was a technique meant for stealth and surprise attacks. Well, I'm done playing with you. Shin launched a Rasengan, piercing Dan's chest. Dan didn't even have time to react. This confirmed Shin's suspicions. He could take on Kage-level opponents now and kill Elite Jonin with ease. Even Kage couldn't kill Elite Jonin so effortlessly. Shin could do it because of his speed. Speed was unmatched. Even a Kage, caught off guard, could be killed by Shin in an instant. Shin, why did you kill him? Tsunade looked at Dan's lifeless body. No point keeping him alive. Don't tell me you were hoping to use him as evidence against Denzo. That's pointless. Why? Tsunade had indeed been thinking that. She wanted Denzo to pay for this. Shin didn't know how to explain. Why? Because even with evidence, Hiruzen wouldn't punish Denzo. Besides, Dan was a root member. Knowing Denzo, he would have implanted some kind of safeguard in Dan. He wouldn't be able to reveal anything. You think you can take down the Hokage's advisor with just Kato Dan? And do you really think he'd be able to say anything? Even if everything went perfectly, would the Sandaime actually punish Denzo? Shin's questions stumped Tsunade. Even with evidence, knowing her teacher, he wouldn't do anything to Denzo. Let's dispose of the bodies and pretend this never happened. Shin said. But the Sandaime approved their involvement. Won't he ask about them? Mikoto asked. Mikoto, you really believed Dan's lies? I guarantee you, the Sandaime never sent him to help us. Shin said with a smile. The Sandaime wouldn't send reinforcements for a C-rank mission. Dan had been lying. Tsunade, you realize that too, right? Shin looked at her. Ahem, yes, of course. Tsunade blushed slightly. Whether she had actually realized it or not was another matter. Shin used the fireball jutsu to incinerate the bodies, leaving no trace. Then they returned to Hidden Leaf Village. Shin opened a Yamatsuhaya Arasaka portal, and they appeared near the village. That space-time ninjutsu can cover such a distance? That's convenient. Tsunade remarked. By the way, where did you learn that jutsu? It's my Mangekyo Sharingan ability. Shin pointed at his eyes. Tsunade opened her mouth, wanting to ask about his Sharingan, but hesitated. It was probably a sensitive topic. Shin noticed her hesitation. Want to know about my Sharingan? Yes, but if you don't want to talk about it, I won't pry. I'll tell you everything when we get back. Shin wasn't planning on hiding it. If he were, he wouldn't have used his Mangekyo Sharingan in the first place. Chapter 43, helping Mikoto awaken her Tutomui Sharingan back in the village, they went to the mission assignment desk and completed their mission, receiving their reward. The reward for a C-rank mission was 10,000 ryo. It wasn't much, especially since it had to be split 4 ways. 2,500 ryo each. Enough for a month's worth of living expenses, but for a shinobi, that barely covered the cost of replenishing their ninja tools. After completing the mission, they returned to Tsunade's house, Mikoto tagging along. Seeing Tsunade and Kushina staring at him expectantly, Shin cleared his throat. I know you're curious about my Sharingan. There's no need to hide it anymore. I have Uchiha blood. Shin explained his lineage, revealing that his mother was an Uzumaki, but his father was an Uchiha. So your father was an Uchiha. Do you know his name? Tsunade asked curiously. Shin glared at her. Don't be so nosy. I don't know who he is, and I don't care. Besides, he's dead. He might have feelings for his mother in this life, but he felt nothing for his father. He had never even met the man. Mikoto, you can stay here for now. Tsunade said. Seeing Mikoto's confusion, she explained. It'll be easier for me to train you here. And it's also to protect you from Denzo. Tsunade knew Denzo was ruthless. After suffering such a loss, who knew what he might do? Tsunade's right, Mikoto. Stay here for now. Shin agreed. He had been about to suggest the same thing. He knew Denzo even better than Tsunade. If Mikoto wasn't under their protection, she might be in danger. Even within Hidden Leaf Village, Denzo wouldn't hesitate to act. He knew that even if Hiruzen found out, the punishment would be a slap on the wrist. Tsunade, you should be careful too. Shin warned. Tsunade was strong, but she wasn't Kage level yet. If Denzo wanted to eliminate her, he could easily send a few elite Jonin. If it weren't for Shin, Tsunade would have been killed. Denzo wouldn't dare attack me within Hidden Leaf Village. Tsunade said confidently. She was right. Denzo might try something outside the village, but within Hidden Leaf Village, he wouldn't risk it. Killing an elite Jonin quickly was difficult. Not everyone was Shin. Even Denzo himself couldn't take down Tsunade quickly. And if he couldn't finish her off quickly, other Hidden Leaf Village shinobi would intervene. Even Hiruzen wouldn't be able to protect Denzo then. Attacking the Senju clan princess? What was he thinking? The Senju clan might have declined, but they weren't extinct. They still held influence in Hidden Leaf Village. Shin, how did you awaken the Mangekyo Sharingan? I thought only Madara Uchiha had it. Tsunade was curious. Madara's isn't a normal Mangekyo Sharingan. It's the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. And awakening the Mangekyo Sharingan is simple. Tsunade's lips twitched. Simple? Then why couldn't so many Uchiha awaken it? Mikoto looked at Shin with curiosity. As an Uchiha, she had heard of the Mangekyo Sharingan, but no one knew how to awaken it. Emotional turmoil. If your emotions are intense enough, your Sharingan will evolve. Emotional turmoil was the key to awakening the Mangekyo Sharingan. In the original story, everyone who awakened it had experienced intense emotional trauma. Itachi Uchiha witnessed Shizue Uchiha's suicide, which triggered his Mangekyo Sharingan. Obito Uchiha saw his beloved Rin Nohara die, and his Sharingan jumped from Tutomoe to Mangekyo. Shin's Mangekyo Sharingan awakening, while not triggered by trauma, was still related to his mental state. If you see your loved one die in front of you, awakening the Mangekyo Sharingan is almost guaranteed. That's brutal. Tsunade frowned. How did you awaken yours then? Ahem, I have my methods. Not something people can replicate. The system had played a significant role in his Mangekyo Sharingan awakening. Without it, he would have awakened it 2 years later. Fine, keep your secrets. Can you help Mikoto evolve her Sharingan? Tsunade asked. Mikoto looked at Shin hopefully. The Sharingan was a powerful asset for an Uchiha. Evolving the Sharingan also increased chakra and overall strength. I can, but it's a bit unpleasant. Shin looked at Mikoto, considering his options. Mikoto had a bad feeling about this.